The award ceremony was bustling and lively, with stars gathering in one place, each wearing a confident smile. They whispered to those beside them, yet their gestures were filled with caution, fearing that even the slightest mistake could lead to unflattering photos in the media. In a small corner, a girl with her hair tied in a ponytail, dressed neatly in a white dress and wearing oversized black glasses that didn't quite match her appearance, was busy pouring tea and serving drinks to the artists, afraid of even the slightest delay. "Mia Dolan, where's my blotting paper? Why can't I find it?" Scarlett O'Hara looked at her with disdain, her face showing irritation. "Go and buy it now." Mia Dolan responded indifferently, quickly agreeing before rushing out. Scarlett O'Hara curled her lip in disgust, muttering, "Clumsy, how did I end up with an assistant like this?" Mia Dolan hurried to the shopping center across from the venue, unaware that a familiar car was parked nearby. Tommy DeVito was dressed in a custom Italian suit, his handsome face hidden behind oversized sunglasses, exuding an exceptional aura. His arrival naturally attracted everyone's attention. They paused their conversations to look at him, though he seemed accustomed to this scene. With a faint, enigmatic smile, Tommy DeVito walked in, arm in arm with Regina George. His gaze swept over Scarlett O'Hara, a hint of disappointment crossing his face before it quickly vanished. Scarlett O'Hara was merely a second-tier actress, yet she acted more entitled than the top stars. "Why isn't Mia Dolan back yet?" she muttered in frustration, and her manager quickly tried to calm her down, knowing it was best to avoid drawing attention. "Scarlett, here's the blotting paper." The weather was warm, and Mia Dolan, having run there, was panting slightly, her cheeks flushed, with a light sheen of sweat on her forehead. Even her shirt was slightly damp from sweat. "Why are you back so late?" Scarlett O'Hara said in annoyance, quickly pulling out the blotting paper and using it to dab her face in front of the mirror. Standing beside her, Mia Dolan felt her throat dry and her lips chapped from thirst. She picked up a cold water bottle, opened it, and then, as if remembering something, quickly handed it to Scarlett O'Hara. "Scarlett, would you like some water?" Scarlett O'Hara glared at her, her tone somewhat cold. "Do you expect me to drink from a bottle in front of everyone? Where's the straw?" Mia Dolan hurriedly found a straw, inserted it into the cold water bottle, and handed it to her. Then, she picked up another bottle and took a deep drink, paying little attention to her image. Little did she know, her every move was being watched by someone. Sensing an intense gaze, she abruptly looked up, scanning her surroundings, but she couldn't locate the owner of that gaze. A proud man like him, how could he be here? Moreover, he hated public appearances before the media. So, he definitely wouldn't show up at the venue, would he? Mia Dolan patted her chest, trying to reassure herself, yet she couldn't shake a lingering unease. "Scarlett, I heard the CEO of WTD Entertainment will be attending the award ceremony," said Assistant Rose, Scarlett's manager, with excitement. A look of joy immediately appeared on Scarlett O'Hara's face. "Are you talking about Tommy DeVito?" "Tommy DeVito." The cold water bottle in Mia Dolan's hand dropped to the ground with a thud, her whole body suddenly stiff. Cold water splashed onto her ankle, sending an unexpected chill up her spine, and the warmth from earlier quickly turned into an icy coldness. Why did he come here? Involuntarily, Mia Dolan looked toward the center of the front row, the seat reserved just for him. His perfect profile and seemingly gentle yet cold smile were all so familiar. Her breath almost stopped, it was truly him. Her whole body fell into panic, memories from 2 years ago resurfacing. She held her breath, unwilling to remember any of it. "Scarlett, I just remembered something I need to do. May I leave early?" Her face turned pale, and she asked anxiously. Scarlett O'Hara gave her a brief glance and scoffed, while Assistant Rose noticed her sickly look and asked with concern, "Mia, are you feeling unwell? Why do you look so pale?" Mia Dolan forced a smile, not bothering to explain. Right now, she just wanted to grow wings and fly away from this place as fast as possible. She hurriedly ran toward the elevator, but the heavy footsteps behind her filled her with dread. Her heart pounded. It was him, it had to be him. The elevator doors opened, and she slipped inside, only to turn and see him standing outside, cold as ice. Even through his sunglasses, she could feel the intense hatred in his gaze. In her nervousness, Mia Dolan pressed the close button multiple times, a bead of sweat trickling down her brow. Just as the doors were about to close, his strong hand stopped them, and he stepped inside. Mia Dolan's eyes widened, almost forgetting to breathe as she felt her heart racing wildly. Once the doors shut, his long arm reached out, pinning her in a corner. His lips curled into a mischievous smile as he spoke, his voice deep yet carrying a hint of mockery. "Little girl, did you think you could escape?" Mia Dolan felt her breath catch, her whole body freezing. She knew she shouldn't have returned to Anton, she should have stayed far away, out of his reach. With his presence, the air around them thickened, an aura of intimacy filling the confined space. "Brother Tommy." Her voice was soft and trembling, laced with boundless fear, not sweet, yet it made Tommy DeVito's gaze deepen. His slender white fingers traced her lips, following their curve as though remembering the taste that belonged to her. "Is the world outside as good as you thought?" His voice was steady, without a ripple, yet it sent shivers down Mia Dolan's spine. She looked at him, her large eyes filled with fear. With a swift motion, Tommy DeVito removed her oversized glasses, muttering, "Ugly." She widened her eyes, innocence flashing through her gaze, and suddenly, as if recalling something, her expression became clear. "Mr. DeVito, I have work to do." "Mr. DeVito?" His voice lifted, his smile widening, as his cold fingers gripped her chin. His tone softened. "You're still not being honest." If you lie again, I'll kiss you." The threat made Mia Dolan immediately stop talking, pursing her lips and looking away. "Sorry, Mr. DeVito, I really am very busy, Before she could finish, his lips pressed down on hers, assertive and unyielding, giving her no chance to refuse. His lips were cool, with a faint minty scent, just like his persona, elegant and refreshing. Yet the kiss was intense, a storm of passion as he bit her lips deeply, as if punishing her for disappearing without a word 2 years ago. The confined space grew warmer, and after a long, lingering kiss, he pulled back. Her lips were swollen, pouting in frustration, her small face filled with unease as she leaned into him. "Mr. DeVito, if you keep this up, I'll report you," she said, her tone serious, her large, innocent eyes glinting. If she hadn't said that, he would have thought she was still the young girl by his side. But her words annoyed him. "Report me?" His voice was gentle, his lips curling with a hint of wickedness. But his fingers mischievously slipped inside her collar. "If you're going to report me, why not be thorough about it?" His warm breath brushed against her ear, his voice filled with suggestive teasing. "Go ahead, report me." Mia Dolan's eyes widened, shocked that this man dared to slip his hand inside her clothing, so unabashedly. "If you don't stop," before she could finish, Tommy DeVito's gaze darkened, his voice taking on a colder edge. "What do you plan to do?" Faced with his icy stare, Mia Dolan instinctively wanted to flee, moving back only to hit the cold metal wall behind her. Her eyes were clearly full of fear, as though she wasn't facing a person but a ferocious beast. Tommy DeVito leaned in and bit her lip. "Are you afraid of me? If you're so scared, why did you leave?" She gasped in pain, pressing her small hand against his chest, her big eyes filling with a soft, watery sparkle. As if she were a bullied little girl, endearing and vulnerable. Tommy DeVito's blue eyes narrowed slightly, his tongue tracing her lips, a low growl escaping his throat. "Little one, you can't escape." "Tommy DeVito." She gasped in shock, unable to believe what was happening. He pretended not to hear her, his deep and seductive voice whispering close to her ear, "You were already prepared for this." As he spoke, his warm breath lingered deliberately on her earlobe, heating the air around her, surrounding her with an intimate tension. She felt like prey that Tommy DeVito had set his sights on. Her breathing quickened, and even his previously calm eyes held a flicker of intense passion. His fingers gently caressed her as he murmured in a teasing tone, "Mia." A flame ignited in his phoenix-like eyes, his pupils reflecting a seductive glint, the blue intensifying to an almost hypnotic allure. It was as if a black hole was pulling her in, drawing every last bit of her reason. Tommy DeVito smiled with satisfaction. It seemed he wasn't just a mere stranger to her after all, at least, she had started to become captivated by him. "Mr. DeVito, please let go." Her voice was cold and stern, her lips slightly pursed, carrying an innocent charm, though the stubborn furrow in her brow marred that beauty. "What if I insist on having you?" His voice remained nonchalant, but even he couldn't hide the determination that laced his words. It was as if this little spirit had been destined to belong to him. Mia Dolan's eyes flashed with a sly glint, her lips curling as she took a small camera out of her bag, smirking. "Mr. DeVito, if you don't let go, don't blame me for being heartless. This recording should be enough proof of your misconduct, don't you think?" He paused for a moment, then smiled lightly. "So you like doing things this way?" "I don't mind." With that, he snatched her bag and tossed it aside, approaching her with casual defiance. Gripping her chin firmly, he looked into Mia Dolan's clear eyes, lost in thought for a moment before realizing he might have applied a bit too much force. Mia Dolan let out a cry of pain, tears instantly pooling in her eyes as her clenched fists trembled helplessly. "You bastard, if you dare continue, what will you do? Fight back. How about we switch it up next time, and you pin me down instead," he teased, his gaze smug. Before he could continue, voices sounded from outside the elevator. "What's wrong with this elevator? It seems to be stuck. Is anyone in there? We should call the building management, it could be serious if something happened." Tommy DeVito's face darkened as he leaned close, biting her earlobe as he warned, "Little troublemaker, you'd better hope I don't see you a second time, or I won't be responsible for what I do to you." Then, he calmly adjusted her clothes, brushed out the wrinkles on his own, and strolled out as if nothing had happened. Mia Dolan clenched her fists, still catching faint traces of his scent lingering around her, refusing to dissipate. In the dressing room, Mia Dolan was juggling bags and holding 3 phones, all belonging to Scarlett O'Hara. Scarlett O'Hara was getting her makeup done, a smug smile on her face. "Mia Dolan, bring me my plum red lipstick." "Yes." Mia Dolan bowed her head, rifling through the pile of bags until she finally found the makeup bag, but couldn't locate the plum red lipstick. "Mia, there's no plum red, only pink." Scarlett O'Hara frowned, snapping, "My ad shoot requires plum red, how can I use another color?" Mia Dolan looked troubled, bowing her head and continuing to search. Scarlett O'Hara glanced at her and muttered, "So clueless." Just then, the dressing room door opened, and a woman in a black dress stepped in, casting a disdainful look at Scarlett O'Hara before letting out a cold snort. She gracefully walked to the mirror next to Scarlett O'Hara, dropping her makeup bag onto the counter with a thud. "New Yen, you're here," the commercial director quickly approached, smiling obsequiously. Regina George didn't look up, calmly gazing at herself in the mirror, her flawless makeup enhancing her elegant look. "Hurry up and start New Yen's makeup. Filming is about to begin," the director urged impatiently. Regina George raised an eyebrow and said slowly, "No need, I have my own makeup artist. I doubt anyone who can only do makeup for a third-rate actress has much skill." The director chuckled nervously, giving a quick glance at the makeup artist. Regina George's comment about third-rate actresses stung Scarlett O'Hara, who shot up, biting her lip and glaring at Regina George, demanding, "Third-rate actress? Who do you think you are? Just a cheap woman who climbed the ranks using the casting couch." Mia Dolan, standing beside her, quickly tugged on Scarlett O'Hara's hand, signaling her to stop. In terms of popularity, Regina George was indeed in the A-list, and with WTD backing her, she was notoriously arrogant in the industry. There were rumors of conflicts with other big stars due to her overbearing and unrestrained behavior. Regina George dabbed a wet wipe on her face to absorb some sweat, saying calmly, "Lan Jia, contact my lawyer and have him file a defamation suit against this no-name actress." "Don't you go too far." Scarlett O'Hara shouted angrily. Underscore 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 underscore. In contrast, Regina George remained calm. She slowly stood up, crossed her arms, and looked at Scarlett O'Hara with a provoking gaze. "Everyone just heard you insult me. Are you going to deny it?" Scarlett O'Hara glared at her furiously, her face showing extreme displeasure, but she couldn't find the words to respond. Regina George glanced down at her bright red nails and sneered. "Calling me a kept woman? At least someone is willing to keep me, unlike you. Just looking at you is nauseating." Scarlett O'Hara's face turned pale. Just as she was about to retort, Assistant Rose rushed over and whispered a few words in her ear, leaving Scarlett O'Hara's face shifting from pale to flushed, in complete disbelief. Her expression then turned extremely ugly, as though she wanted to tear Regina George apart. "Director. What is going on? Wasn't this commercial supposed to be mine? Why was it suddenly given to someone else?" Regina George let out a cold laugh, her eyes full of mockery. She sat back down and said leisurely, "Director, could you please get this buzzing fly away from me? It's quite annoying." "Yes, yes," the director responded obsequiously, hurriedly pulling Scarlett O'Hara aside. Scarlett O'Hara shook off his hand angrily. "Director, we signed a contract. The client unexpectedly wanted Regina George. What can I do?" The director's expression changed instantly, distancing himself from the matter. "Besides, her fame far surpasses yours, you should know your place." "What? I don't know my place. This is a breach of contract." "I don't care, I demand an explanation." "You'll hear from our lawyers." "Director." Regina George's voice echoed from the dressing room. The director quickly responded, "Yes, I'm coming." He shot Scarlett O'Hara a sharp look, said nothing further, and walked out. Scarlett O'Hara stomped her foot in frustration, cursing, "Cowards. All of you are cowards. She's only cozying up to Mr. DeVito. Without that, who is Regina George?" Assistant Rose quickly tugged on Scarlett O'Hara's hand. "Enough, enough, don't make a scene. Everyone knows Regina George is arrogant and overbearing." "Who is Mr. DeVito?" a curious voice chimed in beside them. The two of them turned to see Mia Dolan, blinking her big, innocent eyes in confusion. Even though she wore large, thick-rimmed glasses, they couldn't hide her beautiful eyes, which exuded an air of innocence as pure as water. One couldn't help but be captivated by her gaze at a single glance. Scarlett O'Hara was stunned for a moment, but as she looked closer, she thought those glasses looked ugly. "You don't know who Mr. DeVito is? He's the CEO of WTD, a renowned figure in the industry, and the most cherished member of the MO family, Tommy DeVito," Assistant Rose explained with an admiring look on her face, barely able to hide her envy. "Not to mention, he's exceptionally handsome, far above any superstar." Mia Dolan suddenly trembled. It really was him. "A rare diamond prince," Assistant Rose went on in admiration, though Mia Dolan looked indifferent. Diamond Prince? This title suited him well enough, but outsiders could never know just how ruthless he was. He was a terrifying man. Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside, with people gasping in surprise now and then. 2 lines of security guards entered, clearing a path as people gathered around. A man dressed in a high-end suit strode in. The sound of excited, high-pitched screams from women filled the air as Tommy DeVito approached. His face held a faint smile, his hair perfectly groomed, and his tailored suit exuding elegance. Every line on his chiseled face, his tall frame, and every inch of him radiated an undeniable allure. Wow, no way. It really is Tommy DeVito. Assistant Rose murmured in awe. Meanwhile, Scarlett O'Hara put on a charming look, hoping desperately that Tommy DeVito would notice her. However, none of them realized that Mia Dolan was hiding behind them, silently praying he wouldn't see her, over and over in her mind, "Please don't see me, please don't see me." The heavy footsteps stopped right in front of them. Tommy DeVito's handsome face showed a deep smile, his narrow phoenix eyes glinting with an enigmatic light. Scarlett O'Hara was so nervous that she didn't dare speak. Tommy DeVito was looking at her, actually looking at her. Could it be? As she thought about it, her breathing grew softer. After all, everyone knew that even the slightest rumor of a connection with Tommy DeVito could boost someone's fame. She wasn't about to miss this opportunity. "Mr. DeVito Gia," Scarlett O'Hara called softly, her voice delicate and filled with hope. His thin, sculpted lips curved slightly, and though his smile was faint, it carried an irresistible allure and mystery. "Please step aside." Scarlett O'Hara and Assistant Rose looked at each other in shock. Step aside? What did Tommy DeVito mean? Instinctively, they moved back, and Tommy DeVito took another step forward, reaching out to grab the hand of the girl who was shrinking back. Scarlett O'Hara stared in disbelief at the scene before her. Why was Tommy DeVito holding hands with Mia Dolan? This couldn't be real. It must be a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Regina George, having heard that Tommy DeVito was visiting, hurried out, only to find him firmly holding the hand of an unfamiliar girl. Mia Dolan shrank back, trying to pull her hand away from him, her wide eyes filled with panic. For some reason, although Tommy DeVito was smiling, there wasn't a hint of warmth in him. You let go of me." Tommy DeVito's smile deepened, and with his other hand, he grabbed her bag and dumped its contents onto the floor. "What are you doing?" Mia Dolan glared at him, furiously swatting his hand away before quickly kneeling down to pick up her things. Tommy DeVito knelt down as well, his long, pale fingers sifting through the scattered items, eventually pulling out a camera. Everyone stared in shock at the scene. No one could have imagined that the great Mr. DeVito would be picking a fight with a young woman. He stood up, casually flipped through the camera, erased all the data inside, and then tossed the camera back to her. "Tommy," Regina George rushed over to him, glancing incredulously at the girl picking up her belongings on the floor. She laughed lightly and said, "Why bother with a mere assistant?" Tommy DeVito wrapped an arm around her waist, his thick brows furrowing slightly as he sighed, almost dismissively. "You do well to learn to behave a bit." It was both a warning and a threat. Mia Dolan bit her lip angrily and shoved everything back into her bag, shouting, "You bastard." Everyone's expression shifted from shock to horror. Who was Tommy DeVito? A single word from him could shake all of a city. And who was she? She was just a lowly assistant. Wasn't this just throwing eggs at a rock? A grasshopper trying to kick a cart? To put it plainly, she was digging her own grave. Even Regina George held her breath, a hint of fear in her gaze. She instinctively looked at Tommy DeVito, expecting to see anger in his eyes, but instead, there was an unmistakable look of amusement. A game of cat and mouse. A trace of anger flickered on Regina George's face. Wasn't this woman openly trying to seduce Tommy DeVito, trying to get his attention? Assistant Rose pulled hard on Mia Dolan's hand, whispering, "This girl is usually so naive. What's gotten into her now?" "Mr. DeVito Gia, Mia Dolan is new and doesn't know the rules," Assistant Rose tried to explain. Tommy DeVito turned, slowly stepping toward Mia Dolan. His face wore a teasing smile, and his flawless features seemed more pleased than ever. His cool fingers tilted her chin up, locking eyes with her clear, black and white gaze. He could easily see the anger simmering within her. Was she actually angry? This little girl actually dared to be angry with him? New. Just how new? His tone was filled with suggestion, and everyone held their breath, watching intently to see what would happen next. His elegant brows arched as his handsome face leaned in close to her furious expression, his gaze somewhat complicated. Little girl, this is the second time we've met. Get lost. Mia Dolan's face showed clear frustration. She slapped his hand away forcefully and grabbed her bag, running out. Everyone was stunned by this unexpected turn of events. She dared to hit Tommy DeVito. She might not live to see tomorrow. Tommy DeVito narrowed his eyes, looking down slightly at his hand, which was reddened from her slap. Unpleasant. Seeing that disgusted look on her face was truly irritating. This little girl, was she really starting to resent him? Regina George hurried over, whispering, "Tommy, don't be upset over a mere girl. Get out." He shoved her aside forcefully and strode away. Everyone took a cold breath, each secretly wondering if Regina George had finally fallen out of favor. Watching him leave, Regina George's face turned pale. Well, usually she's so high and mighty, but turns out she's not even worth as much as my little assistant, Scarlett O'Hara mocked coldly. Regina George glared at her fiercely, her red lips pursed tightly. Humph, no matter what, it's not your place to judge, you third-rate actress. With that, she hurriedly went after him. Mia Dolan stormed out, tears streaming down her face. Damn Tommy DeVito, what on earth did he want? Why keep entangling her like this? Everything was already over, wasn't it? Wandering aimlessly down the street, Mia Dolan suddenly froze as a car screeched to a halt in front of her. When she saw the license plate, her face went pale. Before she could turn and run, the car door opened. A middle-aged man with neatly combed hair, a crisp suit, and a serious expression stepped out from the passenger side. But upon seeing Mia Dolan, his face softened with a gentle smile. Mia. Uncle Alfred, why are you here? Mia Dolan asked shyly, clenching her hands nervously. Did this mean she had to go back now? You silly girl, why do you think I'm here? The old master misses you. The moment he heard you were back, he sent me to bring you home, Uncle Alfred said with a warm smile, opening the car door for her. Mia Dolan's face showed a hint of panic. She instinctively took a step back, forcing a smile. Uncle Alfred, how did he know I was back? Uncle Alfred's eyes sparkled with a sly glint as he answered mysteriously, Come home with me, and you'll find out. Staring at the open car door, Mia Dolan sighed silently. The old master's word was law, and she had never dared to disobey him. Reluctantly, she got into the car, though a sense of dread still gnawed at her heart. The familiar mansion loomed on the mountainside, framed by lush greenery, with mountains on two sides and water on the third, a breathtaking scene, almost like a paradise. Yes, when she came here at 6 years old, she'd thought it was heaven, like a dream. But now, she was increasingly afraid of this place. The car door opened, revealing Uncle Alfred's kind face. Mia, let's go inside. The old master has been waiting for you. She looked at Uncle Alfred for a moment, then nodded, stepping out of the car. But as she crossed the arched bridge, an uneasy feeling rose within her. He's waiting for me. She murmured, her slender fingers gliding over the railing, feeling its cold surface under her touch. Yes, the old master was very happy to hear you'd returned, Uncle Alfred replied warmly. Mia Dolan sighed. At this point, could she turn back? She bit her lip and walked on. Everything was as she remembered, the rock garden in the courtyard, the flowers, even the crabapple trees flanking the mansion were still there. It was as though she had never left. But everything in her heart had changed. From that fateful day, everything had turned upside down. Miss Mia is back. Miss Mia is home. Auntie Wong called out joyfully, quickly rushing over to lead her inside. The mansion's interior was decorated in an elegant European-American style, with magnificent chandeliers and Italian-imported carpets, exuding a sense of luxurious opulence. Any item in this mansion likely cost more than she could ever hope to earn. From the dining room came the hearty laughter of Mr. Dolan. She paused, then hurried over. The servant opened the dining room door, making the laughter even clearer, and a deep, seductive male voice was intermingled with it. At the sight, Mia Dolan's face instantly turned pale, draining of all color. She knew it. How had grandfather so quickly learned of her return? It was because of him. Tommy DeVito. He was seated beside her grandfather, holding a glass of red wine and smiling as he spoke. "Mia, you're back. Come, sit down," Mr. Dolan said, noticing her at the door. "What's with you, young lady? If it hadn't been for Tommy, I wouldn't even have known you were home." Mia Dolan's head spun as she sat down beside her grandfather, feeling completely numb. "Grandfather, I'm back," she said softly, her voice tinged with a slight hoarseness, as though she had just been crying, laden with a sense of grievance. "You silly girl. You must have had a hard time out there. I don't know who you take after with that stubborn streak." Though his tone was reproachful, Mr. Dolan's face showed nothing but love and indulgence. Mia Dolan looked up at Tommy DeVito, biting her lip. "Grandfather, why is he here? It seems Mia doesn't really want to see me, does she?" Tommy DeVito said with a slight smile, casually swirling his wine glass. His eyes held a faint, gentle glint, his smile restrained yet tinged with a mysterious allure, exuding an aura of nobility. Mia Dolan bit her lip harder, unwilling to cause a scene with Tommy DeVito in front of her grandfather. "All these years you've been away, Tommy has often come to visit me. He says his feelings for you are sincere, and you shouldn't reject him," her grandfather added, his tone a bit displeased, clearly still somewhat unsettled about her departure years ago. "I'm sorry, grandfather." Mia Dolan lowered her head, sitting quietly beside him. Though she was simply dressed, she exuded an elegance cultivated since childhood. Tommy DeVito stared at her as if trying to see through her. Then, suddenly, he downed his glass of wine. He drank, not to get drunk, but to stay clear-headed. The meal was a torturous ordeal for Mia Dolan, and as soon as it was over, she hurried to leave. Oddly, her grandfather didn't stop her, but what troubled her was that he allowed Tommy DeVito to drive her home. In the car, with the current pop music playing softly, the young woman leaned back in her seat, eyes closed as though asleep. Whether she was genuinely tired or simply unwilling to look at him, he couldn't tell. Her fair face was tinged with a hint of pink, her long lashes trembled slightly, and her lips were a natural red, needing no makeup. A stray lock of hair fell playfully across her forehead. Everything seemed perfectly harmonious. If not for the betrayal 2 years ago, everything might still be the same. She would still be his little girl. But there was no turning back now. His grip on the steering wheel tightened, and a glimmer of anger flashed in his deep eyes. Why had he endured torment for the past 2 years while she remained unscathed? Did she feel no remorse at all? The car stopped suddenly, and Mia Dolan woke with a start. She'd felt his intense gaze on her, but she'd been too afraid to open her eyes, fearful of meeting his mysterious and furious stare. "Are we here?" She looked out, recognizing her shabby apartment complex, shrouded in darkness and filth, but it was indeed her home. "Thank you for bringing me back," she murmured, bowing slightly as she opened the car door and stepped out. The fresh air rushed at her, easing the suffocating feeling from the car. She hurried into her apartment building but soon sensed something was off. Turning around, she saw Tommy DeVito following her leisurely, his expression calm. Her heart skipped a beat, and she forced a stiff smile, her voice polite and distant. "Why are you following me? With this place so dark, who knows what kind of people you might encounter? Aren't you afraid? To me, you're exactly that kind of person. Don't follow me," Mia Dolan said firmly, running toward her door. She quickly unlocked it, but just as she was about to step inside, she felt warmth behind her and caught the faint, alluring scent of his cologne, a fragrance that was uniquely his, smoky and intoxicating. As soon as the door opened, it was slammed shut again. Tommy DeVito forcefully pinned her against the door, his sharp gaze piercing through her as if he wanted to see right into her soul. "Tommy DeVito, that's enough. Get out now, before I really lose my temper." Mia Dolan shouted angrily. The two of them were so close, and even through layers of clothing, she felt deeply uncomfortable. In the darkness, a strange tension lingered, and his gaze was as sharp as a blade, his breath brushing against her face, tinged with a hint of intimacy. Images of his violation days before flashed through her mind, and she took a shaky breath, pushing him away with all her strength. "Tommy DeVito, we have nothing to do with each other anymore. Stop entangling yourself with me." Tommy DeVito calmly turned on the light, the soft glow warming the apartment. He settled himself on the sofa, propping his legs up casually on the coffee table, and slowly lit a cigarette. Even in this small, modest apartment, his every movement exuded elegance and nobility. His gaze held a certain arrogance, wildness, and defiance. "Let's talk." His voice was low, with a unique sensual quality, not loud but impossible to ignore. "We ended things a long time ago. There's nothing left to talk about," Mia Dolan replied, leaning against the door, her gaze averted, her hands clenched tightly with nerves. A hint of anger flickered in Tommy DeVito's eyes. This girl was becoming bolder, daring to talk back to him. He strode over to her, seized her hand, and pulled her possessively into his embrace. Her face was pressed against his firm chest, surrounded by his intense, masculine scent, familiar yet enough to make her shiver. The charged tension filled the air, a gust of cold wind drifting in through the slightly open window, causing the thin curtains to flutter like smoke. The chill breeze swept over them, briefly bringing a hint of clarity. Just as Mia Dolan was about to resist, a sudden pain shot through her chin, forcing her to look up, meeting his fierce, wolf-like eyes. He was seething, looking as though he might transform into a wild beast and devour her at any moment. His long, pale fingers gripped her chin tightly, his gaze icy, radiating a chilling aura. "Little girl, this is the second time we've met. Tell me, how can I possibly let you go?" Her pupils shrank as she looked at the man in front of her in disbelief. "What do you want? What do you think?" A faint smile appeared on his perfectly sculpted face, his lips curving ever so slightly, but without a trace of warmth. Instead, he resembled a demon from the depths of hell, cold and terrifying. "Punishment." He uttered the word lightly, but his gaze sent shivers down her spine. His kiss descended, carrying the familiar hint of mint, but it filled her with fear. In that moment, he transformed into a beast, overpowering and wild, claiming every breath she took. The sensation left her dazed and panicked, her will to resist slipping away as she could only helplessly respond, allowing him to ravage every breath from her. Her once clear eyes grew hazy. In the haze, his alluring eyes half closed, his heated gaze fixed intently on the delicate girl in his arms. A cold snort escaped him as his grip tightened. His thin lips pressed into a sharp line, exuding a chilling, dangerous aura. "So, did he kiss you like this back then?" His words hit her like a thunderclap, shattering Mia Dolan's chaotic thoughts into pieces. "What's wrong? Putting on this pathetic act to win my sympathy," he mocked, tightening his grip on her chin even more. Mia Dolan glared at him, her chin aching as though it would shatter, yet she refused to make a sound. "Do you really think I'm still the Tommy DeVito from 2 years ago?" he sneered, the disdain in his eyes piercing her, as though she were something filthy. Mia Dolan struggled to breathe, her heart feeling as though it was being crushed in an iron grip, suffocating her. "You bastard! Don't touch me!" Her words dripped with resentment and bitterness, spat through clenched teeth. Tommy DeVito's expression darkened, his face tense as he looked at her with a chilling, godlike disdain. "Why? Only he's allowed to touch you. Tommy DeVito, that's enough. Stop making me sick, she shouted, struggling desperately, but her strength was no match for his. Coming back here was a mistake. Otherwise, how else would she have ended up facing him again? The word sick made his eyes narrow, his large hand flexing, veins bulging, as though he wanted to tear her apart. So I make you sick. His gaze burned into her, leaving her breathless and unsettled. Mia Dolan glared at him, too scared to say another word. She knew that if she dared to speak again, he would transform into a beast and devour her whole. But it seemed she had underestimated Tommy DeVito. At this moment, he was already a beast. Mia Dolan's clear eyes gradually filled with mist as she bit her lip, refusing to let a sob escape. She trembled, the scene before her feeling like a replay of the nightmare from 2 years ago, terrifying beyond words. He was like a beast, tearing her apart, wanting to devour her whole. Sensing her terror, Tommy DeVito lifted her chin, sneering, "What's with that pitiful face? I'm not him, I don't care about mercy." His mocking words filled Mia Dolan with fury, and she raised her hand to slap him. But before she could, he caught her wrist. Meeting his dark, intense gaze, her breathing grew ragged as though she were suffocating. "Tommy DeVito, just let me go. I'm begging you." Her voice was hoarse, weak, and pitiful, with misty eyes on the verge of tears. Tommy DeVito paused, but his sly smile only deepened. He leaned in, silently watching her. Their faces were so close they almost touched, and she instinctively held her breath, yet she could still feel his warm breath on her cheek. "Little girl, I've never been a good person. Your pity won't work on me." "Tommy DeVito," she cried, her voice filled with disbelief. Was this really Tommy DeVito? Though she knew his cruelty, he had never treated her this way before. "Yes, call my name. I like hearing you say it." Mia Dolan closed her eyes in anguish. Did he enjoy hearing her say his name? She refused to call him again, though she seemed unaware of how deep Tommy DeVito's resentment truly ran. Even if it meant forcing her, he would not stop. After a night of torment, she fell asleep in exhaustion, her delicate face showing a hint of innocence. Tommy DeVito gazed at the girl sleeping beside him, gently brushing his finger over her lips, which had become chafed from his kisses. Her soft brows furrowed slightly, as if she were uncomfortable. Tommy DeVito leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her lips, filled with affection. The sound of a phone ringing interrupted the silence. He frowned, got out of bed, and went to the bathroom to answer. "Yes, I'm coming now." The ringing of the phone stirred Mia Dolan. She groggily picked it up, and upon hearing the voice on the other end, she jolted awake. What? How did that happen? Ignoring her aching body, Mia Dolan quickly dressed and rushed outside. It wasn't until she was in the taxi that she realized she had no idea when Tommy DeVito had left. If only this could be a happy ending. But would it truly end? The set was in chaos as Mia Dolan arrived, scanning her surroundings until she spotted Scarlett O'Hara seated on a chair. "Scarlett, what happened to you? Can't you see? My leg's been cut." Scarlett O'Hara yelled angrily, her face flushed with frustration. She had finally snagged a supporting role, only to be cut by glass shards on her first day on set, and the wound was quite deep. "Why not go to the hospital?" Mia Dolan muttered, unsure of what she had done wrong to make herself so nervous around her. Assistant Rose was frowning as she helped disinfect Scarlett O'Hara's wound, her eyes filled with worry. "Director." A honeyed voice spoke up, and Cersei Lannister looked at Scarlett O'Hara with disdain before addressing the director. "Her injury looks pretty deep. Maybe, since filming hasn't started yet, it would be best to replace her as the supporting actress. As it happens, I have a cousin who's just entered the industry. Perhaps you might consider." The director looked hesitant. They had already signed a contract with Scarlett O'Hara, and switching her out suddenly would be problematic. "Well, When Scarlett O'Hara heard Cersei Lannister suggesting to replace her, she immediately flared up. What do you mean by that? You want to replace me? Over my dead body? With your leg like that, how are you supposed to perform? Cersei Lannister smirked, giving her a contemptuous look. You're just going to waste everyone's time. Scarlett O'Hara gritted her teeth, furious at her rotten luck, injured on her first day at the set. And with the first scene being in the rain, her injured leg made it even more unlikely she could perform. Scarlett, maybe you should go to the hospital, your wound is still bleeding. Mia Dolan said with genuine concern. You want me to fail too, don't you? Scarlett O'Hara shot her a furious glare, her anger reaching a boiling point. Assistant Rose looked thoughtfully at Mia Dolan, her eyes brightening. Scarlett, why don't you give this opportunity to Mia? Me? Mia Dolan pointed at herself, utterly shocked. Better to recommend someone from our own group than let her suggest someone else, Assistant Rose nodded, giving Mia Dolan an appraising look. Aside from her lack of styling, this girl did look quite refreshing. Fine, go ahead, Scarlett O'Hara sneered at Mia Dolan. Although reluctant, she had no other choice. Mia, this is an opportunity. You have to seize it, Assistant Rose handed her a costume, her eyes full of encouragement. Mia Dolan hesitated, then nodded firmly. This was what she had always wished for, a chance to prove herself. When she emerged from the dressing room in a fitted cheapao, though it was slightly tight, it accentuated her graceful curves. She felt somewhat restrained, even finding it hard to breathe. After getting her makeup done and her hair styled, she quietly looked at herself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the face looking back. She had never worn makeup before, and she hadn't realized that a little makeup could make her look so stunning, as if she had transformed into someone else. You have excellent skin, I only applied a light touch, and you look amazing, the makeup artist remarked approvingly. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes glistening as she looked at her reflection, still in awe. By the little bridge, with flowing water, a beautiful woman stood, wearing an ink-colored cheapao that hugged her figure, highlighting her graceful curves. She held a plum blossom umbrella, her gaze filled with melancholy, as though she could dye the whole rainy season with her sorrow. Her eyes looked longingly toward the crossroad, as if waiting for something. The surrounding crew held their breath, captivated by her, feeling as if they could sense the deep sadness radiating from her. Another figure, holding a gray umbrella, entered the frame. Dressed in a green changshan, his handsome face was calm as he gazed at the woman before him. Jiao and I, did you call me out here for something? Mia Dolan slowly looked up at him, her eyes brimming with emotions, her gaze tender. Swan Gidge, you're leaving soon. This is a protective charm I prayed for, please keep it with you. The young man glanced down at the charm in her hand, nodded, and took it without another word, turning away without hesitation. Mia Dolan watched his retreating figure, hoping he might look back just one more time. Cut. Excellent, we're done, the director called out after a brief pause. The surrounding crew stopped what they were doing, and the rain machine ceased, leaving the girl standing alone by the bridge, looking ahead. She glanced down at the flowing water, the sadness lingering in her eyes. Hi, which agency are you with? I don't think I've seen you before. A smooth, alluring male voice sounded beside her. She glanced up at the man and shook her head. I'm not with any agency. Gatsby Lucas looked at her in surprise. Usually, when he struck up a conversation, women were thrilled, yet this girl seemed entirely indifferent. How unusual. Could it be that his charm was fading? Hey, I'm done with my scenes for the day. How about we grab a meal? A meal? Mia Dolan blinked, then shook her head. I can't. I have to visit Scarlett in the hospital. I'm her assistant, goodbye. With that, she quickly walked past him, feeling constrained in the tight cheapao. Wait. Gatsby Lucas's expression darkened, annoyance flashing across his face as he blocked her path. Do you even know who I am? Mia Dolan gave him a puzzled look, then muttered, of course, we were just acting together. Hey, girl, I'm Gatsby Lucas. He flashed his signature warm smile, thinking she'd surely be captivated now. Mia Dolan just blinked, pondering for a moment, then shook her head. Never heard of you. And with that, she walked away without hesitation. Hey, I'm Gatsby Lucas, Gatsby Lucas. He was genuinely on the verge of exploding with frustration because of this girl. Thinking back on the scene they had just filmed together, he couldn't shake a strange feeling. It was as if he had truly been moved by the sadness in her eyes, but why was she so indifferent in real life? He was Gatsby Lucas, the newly famous idol adored by everyone, yet this girl didn't even know who he was? Humph, playing games with me? Gatsby Lucas let out a cold chuckle, watching as she disappeared into the distance. Inside, he felt as though 100 little claws were scratching at him, making him utterly uncomfortable. Damn it, he muttered under his breath, then hurriedly followed her. Mia Dolan was now sitting in a small corner of the set, wrapped in an oversized coat, observing the filming. The lead actress was Cersei Lannister, a star whom she deeply admired. Unexpectedly, she found herself enjoying this atmosphere. Wasn't this exactly what she'd always dreamed of? She had finally taken her first step, it was a wonderful beginning. Mia, your scene this morning was excellent. The director even asked if you were a professional actress, Assistant Rose remarked. Thank you, Assistant Rose, Mia Dolan replied sincerely. Assistant Rose chuckled softly, handing her a bottle of water. Mia, I really believe in you. This is a great opportunity, you must seize it. Mia Dolan nodded earnestly. She would, indeed, make the most of it. She wanted to prove to everyone that she wasn't just someone without skills or potential. Your scene is scheduled for 5 in the evening. It's a confrontation with the lead actress. In the scene, the lead stumbles into you, and in a fit of embarrassed anger, you slap her hard. Assistant Rose summarized. Mia Dolan nodded, took the script, and started reading carefully. Her character was a fierce, arrogant woman, a role far from her actual personality. As the sky darkened, Mia Dolan curled up in a small chair, pretending to doze off. Elsewhere, a discreet black car quietly parked outside the set. Amid the bustling crowd, a striking man in a custom-tailored French suit stepped out slowly. His lips curved in a slight smile, his dark, alluring eyes scanning the set before landing on a small corner. She was peacefully asleep, looking as serene as a newborn, utterly unbothered. Unaware of the approaching danger. His eyes gleamed predatorily, locking onto his target. Master, Mr. Thorne, standing beside him, reminded him in a low voice. Only then did he pull his gaze away, striding confidently onto the set. A chair had already been arranged for him, and he sat down, crossing his legs, his polished black shoes spotless. Some people were born with a regal presence, radiating elegance and sophistication with the simplest movements. No matter how understated they tried to be, they couldn't help but command attention. Tommy DeVito was such a man. As he entered, Cersei Lannister immediately noticed him. Although she, too, was an actress under WTD, she had never been close to Tommy DeVito. And just recently, she'd heard he'd broken up with Regina George. Wasn't this her chance to make a move? A handsome and wealthy, diamond bachelor like Tommy DeVito was indeed a rare find. Director, it's a bit hot. Let's take a break before the next scene, she said with a pout, her flirtatious gaze directed straight at Tommy DeVito, her eyes filled with longing, as if she couldn't wait to throw herself into his arms. All right, 30-minute break for everyone, the director agreed readily. Cersei Lannister wore a pink cheapao that hugged her figure, accentuating her alluring curves. The slit on the dress revealed glimpses of her fair legs. Mr. DeVito, she called softly, her voice sweet as honey, a tone that made everyone around feel comfortable. Tommy DeVito stared at her for nearly a minute, his lips pressed together as if he were taken by her beauty. But those who knew him well understood that, despite his intense gaze, his thoughts were likely elsewhere. Though Tommy DeVito had a naturally dangerous allure, his focused gaze on Cersei Lannister would have been hard for any woman to resist. One of the staff members set up a chair next to him, and Cersei Lannister eagerly sat down, looking at him with seductive eyes, deliberately leaning closer to show off her charm. "Mr. DeVito, did you come to see Cersei?" Her perfume was overpowering, and Tommy DeVito instinctively leaned back, his mind drifting to Mia Dolan's subtle, fresh fragrance. It was a scent he found pleasant, one that didn't repulse him. "Who are you?" His deep, seductive voice carried a hint of genuine confusion. Tommy DeVito truly didn't remember who the woman before him was. Because he had never truly paid attention to any woman, except Mia Dolan. A flicker of discomfort crossed Cersei Lannister's face. If he didn't know her, why had he been looking at her for so long? Perhaps she didn't realize that when Tommy DeVito looked at her, he was actually observing her attire. A fitted qipao accentuates a woman's figure perfectly, and unconsciously, he began to imagine Mia Dolan wearing one. But upon seeing the high slit in Cersei Lannister's dress, his face darkened. "Mr. Thorne, ask the director to bring me the footage from this morning's shoot." "Mr. DeVito, Cersei Lannister mumbled awkwardly, feeling trapped. She couldn't leave, but staying felt equally uncomfortable. It was clear now that Tommy DeVito hadn't come here for her. "What is it?" He turned, his voice cool and detached, his gaze as unfathomable as a deep well. Cersei Lannister caught her breath, her heart pounding as she bit her lip and shook her head. But she couldn't hide her disappointment. If only this man belonged to her, how wonderful that would be. Tommy DeVito carefully watched each scene, realizing for the first time how stunning Mia Dolan looked in a qipao. Instinctively, he glanced toward the corner of the room, only to find a man sitting beside her, the two of them laughing and talking happily. His expression darkened instantly, a storm brewing beneath the surface. Cersei Lannister could also feel the chill radiating from him, a testament to his power. One look was all it took to freeze the atmosphere. In the corner, Mia Dolan and her companion continued their lively conversation, oblivious to the change in the air around them. "Bring the director here." The director approached Tommy DeVito with a deferential bow. After exchanging a few words, Tommy DeVito turned and walked away. "Hey, how about dinner tonight?" "My treat," Gatsby Lucas offered. No, Mia Dolan refused without hesitation. She had just managed to evade him at lunch, and now here he was again. "Why are you always rejecting me?" Gatsby Lucas scratched his head, growling in frustration. "Why should I consider your feelings? Do I even know you that well?" Mia Dolan replied coldly, glancing at a group of people heading outside. All of them wore black suits and dark sunglasses, reminding her of Tommy DeVito. He liked to bring a whole entourage whenever he went out, flaunting his wealth and power. Maybe he just wanted everyone to know how impressive he was. "Miss, I try to warm your heart, only to be tossed aside so coldly. How could you do this to me?" Gatsby Lucas lamented, wondering why it was so difficult to get close to her. "What exactly have you done to warm my heart?" Mia Dolan shot back. Seated beside her, Gatsby Lucas's face froze momentarily before he forced a grin. "How would you like me to warm it?" Mia Dolan glared at him, muttering, "Keep dreaming." "Mia, the director wants you on set with Miss Tam for the next scene," Assistant Rose called over. Mia Dolan put her script aside and nodded. "All right." The scene took place in a room. Mia Dolan entered, only to be tripped by Cersei Lannister and, embarrassed, angrily slapped her. It seemed like a simple enough scene, yet they had to reshoot it countless times. "What's wrong with you? Does falling look that difficult?" "Honestly, a rookie actress with no acting ability at all. You look terrible on camera. Do it again." "No, it's still not right. Do it over." "Where did they find this person?" Are you just here to waste everyone's time? Can't even manage a simple scene? Is your brain waterlogged? The director threw the script aside in anger, and the surrounding staff glared at Mia Dolan, their dissatisfaction clear on their faces. A straightforward scene had dragged on from the afternoon until 8 p.m. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Mia Dolan apologized repeatedly, her entire body sore and exhausted. But facing all the accusatory looks, she had no right to complain. What a hassle. I knew it was a mistake to hire a rookie, Cersei Lannister sneered, her soft tone laced with disdain. As the lights went out, everyone dispersed, leaving Mia Dolan alone in the empty set. Everyone blamed her, and she truly didn't know what to do. Every attempt seemed to be wrong. The looks they gave her felt like 1,000 daggers piercing her heart. With a weary sigh, Mia Dolan's eyes filled with unshed tears, but she forced herself to hold them back, refusing to let them fall. Miss, don't be sad. It's just a few NGs, retakes, nothing to be afraid of. You've got Gatsby here to protect you, Gatsby Lucas said with a bright smile, holding out a lunchbox. Mia Dolan looked up, her clear eyes glistening with tears, and there was a look of dismay in them. Am I really that hopeless? Not at all. You're amazing. You're the only actress who's ever moved me. Besides, have you ever seen a baby born already knowing how to walk? Gatsby Lucas sat down beside her, offering her the lunchbox. Have something to eat, there's still more filming to go. Mia Dolan shook her head, sighing. I'm just going to the restroom for a bit. In the restroom, she bit her lip, feeling her pent-up frustration rise. The girl in the mirror looked hurt, her expression full of grievance. Being criticized by everyone around her was an unbearable feeling. Suddenly, she heard heavy footsteps in the men's restroom next door and the hushed voice of the director. Mr. DeVito, I followed your orders exactly. Oh dear, don't you see how upset Mia Dolan is? Even I'm starting to feel bad. Yes, thank you, Mr. DeVito. Mr. DeVito, goodbye. Mia Dolan froze, rooted to the spot. She was sure she'd heard correctly, Mr. DeVito. Was there another Mr. DeVito in a city? Tommy DeVito. Mia Dolan hurriedly wiped the tears from her face and pushed open the men's restroom door. What are you doing? Do you have some strange hobby? Enjoy watching men in the restroom, the director bellowed, though he looked a little uneasy. Give me your phone. Mia Dolan sniffed, her voice hoarse. The director scowled, saying nothing as he quickly pulled up his pants. Without knowing where she found the courage, Mia Dolan lunged forward, snatched the phone from his pocket, and dialed a number without hesitation. Her face flushed, anger radiating from her entire being. That man, could he haunt her any more? Tommy DeVito, you're despicable. Do you think you can break me this way? I'm not as weak as you think. Whatever you've got, bring it on, I'm not afraid of you. You make me sick. After yelling, she tossed the phone back to the director and strode out. The frustration within her seemed to dissolve. It wasn't just because she had vented at Tommy DeVito but because she realized she wasn't as worthless as she thought. All of this was his doing. Was he actually enjoying seeing her cry and struggle? What a strange, vile hobby. Hey, want something to eat? Gatsby Lucas greeted her eagerly. She had cried, she had vented, and now she was starving. She nodded and sat down next to him. You go to the restroom and your mood improves. Gatsby Lucas joked, noticing the change in her demeanor. She wore her emotions on her sleeve, and he could see it right away. No. I'm just fed up with a certain obnoxious man. Gatsby Lucas's face grew serious. He asked in a low voice, is it that guy? Mia Dolan looked at his worried face and snapped, why are you so nosy? Gatsby Lucas almost choked. Sure, he was talkative, but he genuinely cared about her, and it had taken him a long time to find a girl he liked. He didn't want to lose her to someone else. Mia Dolan ate in silence, simmering with anger at Tommy DeVito and his relentless torment. How long did he plan to hound her? Right at that moment, her phone rang. Only a few people had her number, so she assumed it was Tommy DeVito, but it turned out to be a call from home. She answered, and as she listened, her expression changed. She quickly hung up and rushed out. At the hospital, she hurried to the emergency room and, seeing Lai Quan-jia, Uncle Alfred, clung to him like a lifeline, asking anxiously. Lai Quan-jia, what happened? How's Grandpa? Lai Quan-jia's face was clouded with worry. He sighed and said, Miss, it's all because of the company. The company? But Grandpa's company was doing fine, wasn't it? That was before, now, it's just barely scraping by. Today, for some reason, the stocks plunged, and the old man was so worried. Lai Quan-jia sighed again. So the company was struggling this much. Had everything really changed in these 3 years? Her phone buzzed, and she frowned as she took it out, paling when she saw a message from an unknown number. The message was short, but it sent a chill down her spine. It was from Tommy DeVito. You have 3 hours to show up in front of me, or the company will go bankrupt. She leaned back against the wall, staring at the emergency room light, her hand clenching her phone tightly. For the first time, she felt a deep loathing for him. 3 hours. It was already 1:30. But where was she supposed to find Tommy DeVito? The phone buzzed again. I prefer you in a white dress. Kai Diet Bar. White dress. Her face went pale, a trace of bitterness surfacing. That man truly knew how to exploit her weaknesses. Back when she was the Dolan family's heiress, her favorite attire had been white dresses. But after everything that happened, she'd stopped wearing them. It was a painful memory for her, yet he had no qualms about reopening that wound. Lai Quan-jia, I need to step out for a bit. Please call me when he wakes up. Without waiting for a response, Mia Dolan rushed out. She was 6 years old when he had given her everything, now it was her turn to repay him. She picked up a simple long white dress from the mall, then returned home for a quick touch-up. She had always been beautiful, needing only light makeup to enhance her features, but tonight, she made herself look different. Heavy makeup framed her eyes in smoky shadows, her sharp eyeliner lending her an air of wild allure. She looked like a siren, radiating an enticing charm. With a half-lidded gaze and a lazy elegance, she looked like a feral cat, untamed. Satisfied with the look, she applied deep red lipstick. Her straight hair was styled in voluminous curls that cascaded over her shoulders. Her lips curled in a sly smile, and she exuded a wild aura. Some things could not be avoided, so she would stop running. Going with the flow was sometimes the quickest route, even if it was through the back door. Kai Diet Bar. The bar was nestled in a quiet alley, but the stream of luxury cars suggested this was no ordinary place. Mia Dolan exited her taxi, smoothed her hair, and glanced at her watch. 15 minutes left until 3. She walked slowly on her high heels. Though her face was calm, her palms were damp with sweat. As she entered the bar in the quiet afternoon, Mia Dolan was immediately led to a private room. She hesitated, biting her lip, but with her grandfather still in the hospital, she had no other choice. Without knocking, she pushed open the door. The smell of heavy smoke hit her as she stepped in, making her cough, while the pulsating music was underscored by murky laughter and indistinct flirtation between men and women. Scanning the room, she noticed familiar faces, Tommy DeVito's friends, as well as several portly men bantering with women. Her entrance did little to disturb the revelry in the room, and she stood by the door for a moment until someone finally noticed her. Ah, sister-in-law, you're finally here. The boss has been waiting for you impatiently. Troy Barnes grinned as he tugged her toward the corner of the room. There, seated on a solitary sofa, Tommy DeVito leaned back lazily. His gaze imbued with a sleepy indifference, like a lion in repose, one not without danger but simply not yet unleashed. Boss, sister-in-law is here. Troy Barnes winked at Tommy DeVito and playfully pushed Mia Dolan into his arms. The familiar hint of a classic cologne, mixed with the faint scent of smoke, struck her with a pang of nostalgia. She scrambled to get up, only to be pulled back by him, landing once more in his embrace. With one arm around her waist, she lay nestled in his lap like a small bird, creating a scene of deceptive harmony and sweetness. Yet, in the corner of her eye, Mia Dolan caught sight of something that made her freeze. A portly man lounged on a sofa, a lecherous grin on his face. Kneeling in front of him was a scantily clad woman, seemingly engrossed in an unspeakable act. As she stared, horrified, her chin was suddenly caught in Tommy DeVito's grip, forcing her to meet his intense gaze. His deep blue eyes were void of emotion, as tranquil and impenetrable as a still well, betraying nothing. He was a master of concealment, even those closest to him could never predict his next move. "Did you enjoy insulting me?" His voice, low and sensual, carried a lazy drawl, his thin lips curling up in a half-smile, a hint of mystery flickering across his face. But Mia Dolan felt suffocated, her lips quivering slightly, her eyes glistening. "Tommy, brother," Tommy DeVito's smile deepened as he studied her carefully. She seemed unsettled, her gaze darting nervously around the room, her clear eyes revealing her anxiety. Yet, he didn't like her makeup today. The white dress exuded purity, but the heavy makeup added a wild edge. It was an intense mix of ice and fire, rendering her like an alluring siren. His eyes flashed with irritation as he remarked, "Your makeup looks terrible." Mia Dolan blinked, her clear eyes glinting with mischief as she relaxed, wrapping her arms around his neck. She smiled playfully. "You don't like it?" Tommy DeVito remained impassive, offering no reply. Instead, he pushed her off, stood, and adjusted the creases in his suit. He clapped his hands. The loud music and flirtatious chatter ceased immediately, and everyone's eyes shifted to Tommy DeVito. Even in the shadows, his commanding presence radiated unmistakably. His lips pressed into a severe line, exuding an intimidating, regal authority. "I want to introduce someone to all of you." His narrow, captivating eyes swept over the room, a hint of mockery flashing within. "Boss, who are you introducing? Is it a new girl? If it's a sister, I'm all for it. I'm still a virgin, waiting to be initiated." Dale Doback, another of Tommy DeVito's companions, laughed loudly, his banter echoed by Troy Barnes beside him. "Virgin? More like someone who's been initiated countless times already," Troy Barnes teased. "Shut up. I'm as fresh as they come." Tommy DeVito's lips twitched into a faint, icy smile as he seized Mia Dolan's wrist, pulling her into his arms. Caught off guard, she stumbled, her high heels wobbled, and she would have fallen had he not steadied her. But in the process, she twisted her ankle. She gasped in pain, her eyes welling up with unshed tears, though she stubbornly refused to let them fall. "This lady," Tommy DeVito began his introduction slowly, "is the eldest daughter of the Dolan family, and the woman who rejected my proposal 3 years ago." A collective gasp rippled through the room as everyone's eyes fell on Mia Dolan, who looked pale as she leaned against Tommy DeVito. Who was he? A man at the top of the pyramid, someone untouchable by most. And she had refused his marriage proposal. The audacity! Utterly beyond belief. Only Troy Barnes and Dale Doback exchanged glances, sighing inwardly. They knew all too well what their boss was thinking. It looked like Mia Dolan was about to face a rather unfortunate situation, and a severe one at that. Though everyone murmured amongst themselves, none dared ask further. They simply listened as Tommy DeVito continued his introduction. Now, his piercing blue gaze fixed on her, chilling her to the core. Suddenly, Mia Dolan felt as though an icy shroud was enveloping her, creeping upward from her feet. "She's merely one of the many women I can discard at will, one I can gift to anyone at any time. I wonder if any of my brothers here would be interested." As he finished, he maintained his faint, chilling smile, the handsome face a mask of frosty detachment. Mia Dolan's pupils shrank, her beautiful eyes wide with shock, barely able to process what he had just said. He was willing to hand her over to another man. In that moment, she felt nothing but a numbing chill wrapping around her, like a serpent coiling around her body. You think you're special, little girl? Maybe you were before, but now, you're just another woman, a cheap one who's been passed around by multiple men. His smile was tainted with mockery, his gaze devoid of warmth as he whispered in her ear. Just loud enough for only her to hear. Tommy DeVito, you're insane. Let go of me. In desperation, Mia Dolan struggled, and a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. With a swift shove, he pushed her toward the portly man in the corner who had been leering earlier. She let out a sharp breath, feeling herself collapse against a soft cushion, only to realize with horror that it was the man's body. His heavy breathing behind her made her skin crawl. Laughter erupted around her, and lascivious eyes lingered on her, sizing her up while vulgar comments flitted about her appearance. Mia Dolan's small face instantly showed a look of fear, her pleading eyes glancing towards Tommy DeVito, who remained impassive, seated in his earlier spot, watching the scene unfold before him with a cold detachment. Her face turned as pale as snow as she braced herself, feeling something hot under her hand, which instantly brought back the horrifying images she had just witnessed. She held her breath, desperately struggling to stand. But just as she stood, the man behind her grabbed her with a strong pull. Rip. The sound of fabric tearing echoed in the room, and a cold draft sent chills down her spine, freezing her in place. The men's eyes turned predatory, taking in her fair skin and frightened expression, allowing their minds to wander into unsavory thoughts. Tommy DeVito's earlier statement about offering her as a gift to his brothers seemed to incite a sinister excitement among the group, who ogled her with brazen greed. Terrified, Mia Dolan tried to shield herself, biting her lip as she slapped away the hands of the man holding her in place. But he tightened his grip on her arm, refusing to let go. She let out a piercing scream, twisting to escape, but the man with the large belly grabbed her hair, pain searing across her scalp. Her body was lifted off the ground and thrown back onto the sofa. The sofa, damp in places, made her feel queasy, her gaze darting back to Tommy DeVito, who continued to observe the scene with a cold amusement. Feeling as if her heart had turned to ice, Mia Dolan imagined herself as a fish laid on a chopping block, awaiting the inevitable with nowhere to escape, regardless of how hard she struggled. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to remain calm, and as her panic slowly subsided, a hint of resolve shone in her eyes. Unexpectedly, her hand touched a hard object, and a glimmer of hope crossed her face. "Why are you men always in such a hurry?" she asked seductively, casting a fleeting glance at Tommy DeVito. She wasn't sure if Tommy DeVito had any lingering feelings for her, but this might be her only chance to bet on it. She couldn't afford to lose, so it was a considerable gamble. The large-bellied man's face flushed, clearly enjoying her playful tone. "Little temptress, what do you have in mind?" "Don't worry," she said, biting her lip with a forced smile, gripping her newfound object so tightly that her nails dug into her palm, though she felt no pain. Occasionally, she glanced over at Tommy DeVito, but he gave no reaction, as if none of this had anything to do with him. Mocking him silently, Mia Dolan thought, if Tommy DeVito didn't care for her, she'd have to take this desperate chance, hoping for a spark of life amidst the shadows. With that thought, she held the paring knife tightly, and just as the large-bellied man leaned in close, she pressed the blade against his neck. "Good God, don't do anything rash, please don't," the man cried out, his voice tinged with terror. Mia Dolan sneered, her gaze fixed on Tommy DeVito. "Let me go, and I'll let go of him. I'll let you go, I swear." The man stammered, panicking. "Please, just don't do anything hasty." The people around her immediately stood up, but all waited on Tommy DeVito's cue, too afraid to move without his signal. His narrow, phoenix-like eyes glinted with amusement, not expecting Mia Dolan to resort to such measures rather than begging for his help. "Tommy DeVito, are you letting me go or not? Because if you're not, I'll make sure to take your friend with me." "Barefooted people don't fear the ones wearing shoes," she said, staring him down with a defiant glint in her eye. He got up, walking over to her, and with a simple flick of his wrist, the knife slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor as Tommy DeVito pulled her into his arms. The large-bellied man collapsed to the ground, weakened by fear. Upstairs at Kai Duyet, where the bar transitioned into a hotel, Tommy DeVito dragged her up by her collar as though he were carrying a stray cat, before tossing her into a private room. He flung his jacket aside and began unbuttoning his shirt. Mia Dolan felt her nerves twist in confusion, her wide eyes studying him, unsettled by his nonchalance. "I think we need to have a little chat," she stammered. "A chat?" he repeated, his voice a low rumble, his thin lips pressed into a hard line that exuded a menacing aura. He'd only unbuttoned 3 buttons, just enough to expose his toned, tanned chest and reveal his sturdy build. "I'm not in the mood to talk to a woman who, minutes ago, had some other man's hands all over her." Mia Dolan felt her breath catch as the memory replayed in her mind, especially the part where her hand had touched something unpleasant. A wave of nausea bubbled up, and she bolted into the bathroom. After retching, she sank into the bathtub, scrubbing herself vigorously until her skin turned red and raw. Her dress was beyond repair, ripped and torn to shreds, leaving her to wrap herself in a towel. She studied her reflection in the mirror. The heavy makeup she had worn was washed away, leaving her face pale but luminous, her eyes alive with new determination. Her cheeks flushed pink from the hot water, adding a peculiar intensity to the strange atmosphere. She had finished bathing, a towel wrapped around her body, and in the next room, a man waited. She knew precisely what this meant. But now, she couldn't spare a thought for anything else. After the terrifying ordeal she'd endured, paired with her grandfather's sudden illness, she had no energy left for further complications. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Mia Dolan composed herself and took slow steps out into the room. Tommy DeVito remained seated as he had been an hour earlier, his handsome face now clouded with irritation, as though on the verge of losing patience. He looked like he was about to storm into the bathroom to drag her out. "I thought you might have drowned in there," he said coldly. "The world is still a beautiful place, I'm in no hurry to leave it," Mia Dolan mumbled, clutching the towel around her, feeling it was far too short. "What haven't I already seen?" Tommy DeVito sneered, eyeing her makeup-free face with a faint trace of satisfaction. Giving up on covering herself, Mia Dolan looked straight at him, her voice steady. "Mr. DeVito." "I don't like that form of address," he interrupted, and she bit her lip, her eyes showing a flicker of bitterness. "Brother Tommy, my grandfather is in the hospital." He glanced at his watch, his lips a straight line. "I know. Will you help me?" she asked, biting her lip so hard it hurt, her gaze shifting to the wine cabinet beside her. She kicked off her slippers and padded over, downing a few large gulps from an open bottle of wine. "Ah," she burped, but while people said wine loosens the tongue, she found herself feeling just as guarded as before. Shaking her head, she gulped down another half of the bottle. Tommy DeVito watched her indulgently, as if he were watching some kind of amusing spectacle. "Brother Tommy," she slurred, the alcohol taking effect, 3 parts drunk, 7 parts sober, as she staggered into his lap. Taking advantage of the moment, she wrapped her arms around his neck, her eyes dreamy yet earnest. "Brother Tommy, didn't you say you liked me?" She pouted, looking at him with a hopeful gleam. He stayed composed, his lips curling slightly into a mysterious smirk. "You're putting on quite a show, little girl. You've got some talent." Mia Dolan bit her lip, realizing he had seen through her act. This sly fox, how could she ever outwit him? Glimpsing another chance, she bit down on her lower lip until the sharp pain brought real tears to her eyes. Through a foggy haze, she looked up at him, pressing her cheek against his firm chest. "Brother Tommy, you messaged me, doesn't that mean you wanted to be with me? I'm willing, but please, save my grandfather. Letting a few tears fall onto his shirt, she sniffed and snuggled closer. Do you like me? She whispered. Little girl, what am I to you? To her. Once, he had been someone she avoided at all costs, but now, he was like a lifeline, her last desperate hope. With a pout, she rubbed against his chest, her small hand slipping under his shirt, gently stroking. What do you want from me, really? She asked. Stay with me for 6 months, he replied coolly. I'll ensure your grandfather's company remains secure for a year. Deal, she answered without hesitation. A year, surely, that would give her time to earn enough to support her grandfather. He tilted his head, his deep blue eyes like those of a hawk fixed on her, his expression calm. As if unsure of her next move, she wobbled back to the wine rack, taking more swigs and gazing at him with a glazed look. A faint chuckle escaped Tommy DeVito's lips as he observed her drunken state, standing to scoop her up in his arms. Taking the wine bottle from her, he watched her cheeks flush under the soft glow. Do you like drinking this much? Her steps unsteady, her mind spinning, she felt as if she were walking on clouds, legs weak. Drinking, why is the room spinning? She mumbled, tapping her head in frustration, her small face showing an endearing, slightly silly expression. Her deep eyes now filled with a primal hunger, she clung to his neck, responding to his kiss with equal fervor, her body soft and yielding. Brother Tommy, she whispered his name, her voice softening into a tender murmur that sounded like music to his ears. Breathing in the fragrance of her hair, he buried his face in her soft locks, his warm breath brushing against her ear. With his gaze dark and possessive, he lifted her and carried her toward the bedroom, where a warm haze of intimacy enveloped them. The soft morning light seeped through the window, casting a gentle glow on the bed in disarray. Clothes lay scattered around the room, the girl nestled in his arms, her slender arm revealing faint bruises. Suddenly, her eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes slowly opened, still drowsy. Frowning slightly, she massaged her temples, her head throbbing, likely from the wine. Sitting up, the thin blanket slipped, exposing the marks he'd left on her delicate skin, her once smooth complexion now marred by countless love bites. Taking a deep breath, she tried to recall the events of last night. That damn Tommy DeVito, was he a wolf in human clothing? Did he have to leave such marks all over her? Moving her legs, a sharp pain shot through her, making her feel as if they no longer belonged to her. Her cheeks flushed crimson, and she glanced over at the man beside her, who appeared to be fast asleep. Without his usual cold and arrogant gaze, his face seemed gentle, almost like a refined scholar from the south. Quietly gathering her clothes, she was about to sneak away when a dry chuckle startled her. Where do you think you're going? Huh? She looked back at the bed in shock, his gaze meeting hers with a half-amused, half-mocking look, his eyes bright and alert. So he had been pretending to sleep? Ah. I have a scene to film today. I should get going, she stammered. Not signing the contract, he asked, stopping her in her tracks. She turned back, forcing an awkward smile. Then, I'll go shower first. Watching her small frame disappear into the bathroom, Tommy DeVito's lips curved into a faint smile, a fleeting expression that quickly vanished. He lazily made a phone call, and shortly after, someone brought up a change of clothes. He was leisurely buttoning his shirt just as Mia Dolan emerged, casting him a shy smile. Why are you grinning like a fool? He asked, his tone icy and his face expressionless. Mia Dolan felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her. She pursed her lips, grabbed the clothes laid on the bed, and turned to head into the bathroom. Where do you think you're going? He was adjusting his shirt, his collarbone showing a red, swollen bite mark, clearly a reminder of last night. This little wildcat needed to be properly tamed, it seemed. I'm going to get dressed. Tommy DeVito turned, eyeing her from head to toe. Don't I already know exactly how much flesh is on your body? After saying this, He shook his head with a look of disdain, seemingly full of regret, then turned and walked out. "I'll wait for you downstairs." Mia Dolan twitched the corner of her mouth, forcing a smile, and walked over to the mirror, murmuring, "My body isn't bad at all." Yet, she couldn't be sure. Hastily, she dressed and headed downstairs. It was almost as if he had planned it. Tommy DeVito had found her a white dress, more exquisitely tailored than the one she'd randomly picked up yesterday. Tommy DeVito sat by the bar, sipping a glass of wine, exuding an endless charm from even his profile. Fortunately, it was morning, and the bar was empty. Otherwise, who knew how many female admirers would have been eyeing him? "Mr. Mo, are you satisfied with last night's deal?" Mia Dolan brushed her hair back, smiling gently. "Satisfied?" He raised an eyebrow, his thin lips curving in a mocking smile. "It seemed like I was the one serving Miss Dolan last night, wasn't it?" Her face flushed, stunned by his bluntness in recounting last night's events. Feeling embarrassed, she glanced away, clearing her throat softly. "What do you want?" "Nothing much. I was more or less satisfied last night." Tommy DeVito responded nonchalantly, tossing a couple of sheets that looked like contracts in her direction. "Just signing this will do." Mia Dolan skimmed through, her gaze finally stopping at 3 grand, flourishing characters at the corner of the paper. For some reason, she suddenly felt she'd walked into a trap. Forcing a smile, she closed the contract, turned slightly to look at Tommy DeVito. "You're not doing this on purpose, are you?" "On purpose?" "Miss Dolan, don't forget, your grandfather is still in the hospital. You sign this, and the company will be fine immediately. But if you hesitate even a bit, whether the company survives is anyone's guess." Tommy DeVito said coolly. Mia Dolan glared at him, fully aware that Tommy DeVito was a ruthless wolf who devoured people without even spitting out the bones. But right now, she had no other choice. She could only obediently clean herself up and throw herself into his clutches. It felt a little ironic. She had tried to escape 3 years ago, only to end up as a laughingstock. She had still fallen into his hands. But for her grandfather's sake, she would sign it. After all, being used by him once or 1,000 times, what difference did it make? Just as Tommy DeVito had once said, a woman who had been used was nothing more than a tattered rag, long past its value. Should she feel fortunate, then? At least she was a high-priced rag. "I'll sign." Biting her lip, she scrawled her name, her tense body finally relaxing, though a hint of bitterness lingered in her heart. She tossed the contract to Tommy DeVito. "Mr. DeVito, I've just entered the entertainment industry. I hope you'll help me." "Help?" He narrowed his eyes, as if calculating something. Mia Dolan kept a cold expression, raising her voice. "Do you think I'll let you get away with a free ride?" "No chance." Her voice was a bit loud, catching the attention of nearby staff who discreetly glanced her way. She pocketed the contract and left without even a farewell. Tommy DeVito didn't mind, smirking faintly as he took another sip of his drink. "So, big brother, how was last night?" Troy Barnes and Dale Doback slid into the seats beside him. Tommy DeVito gave them a brief glance, his tone indifferent. "Did you finish the task I gave you?" "Of course, finished it first thing in the morning." "Dolan Corporation stocks will rise soon," Troy Barnes said, taking a swig from a beer bottle. "I just wonder how sister-in-law will feel if she finds out you're the one targeting Dolan Corporation," Dale Doback muttered quietly. Troy Barnes quickly nudged him, signaling for him to stop talking, but Tommy DeVito had already heard. "Dale Doback, there's an opening in the African branch. I think you're well suited for it." "Big brother, no. That's like silencing me for good." Dale Doback shrank back. "Africa? Going there would be as good as peeling his skin off. But seriously, big brother, a word of advice. This Mia Dolan is bad news. Just play around with her. Troy Barnes patted him on the shoulder, then pulled Dale Doback away. Tommy DeVito's fingers glided over his wine glass, his gaze becoming unusually deep, with a sharp glint in his blue eyes. One mistake in life is enough, he thought, his hand touching the scar near his heart, his gaze dimming. In the hospital room, Mia Dolan was peeling an orange for her grandfather. Mr. Dolan looked somewhat pale. After the severe illness, he seemed to have aged significantly. "Grandpa, have an orange." "Mia, I'll be fine. Go focus on your own affairs." For the first time, Mia Dolan saw a serene expression on her grandfather's face, as if he had long come to terms with life and death, but this only made her worry more. "Stop saying that, Grandpa. You have no idea how scared I was. Don't ever scare me like that again." In years past, they had never spoken like this. Dolan Lao Jia was always strict, never as gentle as today. For the first time, Mia Dolan realized that no matter how imposing her grandfather was, he was still just an old man. "It's just an old ailment, nothing serious." Dolan Lao Jia responded indifferently, taking a bite of the orange, then seeming to recall something. "Mia, though I don't know all the details of what happened 3 years ago, I still hope you and Tommy can be together." "What are you saying, Grandpa?" "I think Tommy still has feelings for you." Mia Dolan gave a faint smile. Feelings? Tommy DeVito, that arrogant man, had probably swallowed his resentment from 3 years ago and was bent on revenge. His so-called concern was all on the surface, he was more eager to drag her down to hell. While lost in thought, she heard the hospital room door open, and Tommy DeVito appeared at the entrance, holding a bouquet of lilies. Dressed in a blue Armani suit, his hair slicked back perfectly, he wore an enigmatic smile on his handsome face. He was like the sun, wherever he went, attracting a halo of attention. Mia Dolan tensed up. Why was he here? As if reading her mind, Tommy DeVito's gaze immediately found hers. His thin lips tightened, his gaze moving slowly from her eyes down her form with a mocking, insolent glint as if he could see through her in an instant. Mia Dolan's face turned pale. This jerk. Daring to look at her like that in front of her grandfather. She tugged her neckline higher, turning her face away, pretending not to see him. "Grandpa, how are you feeling?" Tommy DeVito's voice carried a hint of laziness, his smile just the right amount as he handed the bouquet to butler Alfred, then sat down beside Mr. Dolan. Seeing him seem to lift Mr. Dolan's spirits, he patted Tommy DeVito's hand gently. "Tommy, I'm fine, you didn't need to go through the trouble of coming here." "It's no trouble. Since you're here, Tommy, there's something I want to ask your opinion on." The words Mr. Dolan had just spoken to her flashed through Mia Dolan's mind, and her expression immediately shifted. "Grandpa, you're not fully recovered yet, you should rest more." "Mia, don't interrupt," Mr. Dolan shot her a stern look, then turned back to Tommy DeVito. 3 years ago, Tommy, didn't you propose to Mia? Now that she's back, what do you think?" Mia Dolan bit her lip, feeling anxious. What did her grandfather mean by this? Was he implying that she couldn't find a husband if it wasn't Tommy DeVito? And why did he have to ask so humbly? She had no intention of marrying Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito looked at Mia Dolan with an unreadable expression, then suddenly smiled. "Grandpa, Mia and I just aren't meant to be. We couldn't be together 3 years ago, and we're not fated to be together now either." Mia Dolan was stunned by his response. This guy, he turned her down. Mr. Dolan's face showed a hint of regret as he sighed. "Well, that's unfortunate." Mia Dolan pouted in annoyance. "Grandpa, what's there to regret? Do you think your granddaughter is destined to be a spinster?" As soon as she said this, the entire hospital room fell silent, then Mr. Dolan burst into laughter, nodding. "Huh, my granddaughter is truly one of a kind." Tommy DeVito looked at her with a deep gaze, a faint smile on his lips. He appeared calm, as if he were just going along with the flow, but his gaze was intense and possessive. As they left the room, Mia Dolan instinctively wanted to keep her distance from him, walking briskly ahead. Tommy DeVito strolled behind her at his leisure, his bodyguard stepping back to give him space, standing watchfully behind him like stars encircling the moon. At the elevator, Mia Dolan could still feel his powerful presence behind her. Ding! The elevator doors opened. She stepped in first, and Tommy DeVito followed unhurriedly. She could feel an overwhelming energy radiating from behind, making it hard to breathe. She coughed lightly, watching as the floors ticked down. Suddenly, she felt an arm wrap around her waist, pulling her into a firm embrace. Believe it or not. His warm breath brushed against her ear, making it burn red. What? She stammered, trying to break free from his hold, only to press herself closer against him. What a rogue. Believe it or not, there isn't another man in a city who would dare to marry you. Her breath hitched, and her delicate eyebrows knitted together. What was he getting at? Hadn't he just rejected her? She wasn't even upset yet, and now he was acting strange. Humph, who says I'm destined to be alone? It's simple. His voice was calm, pausing deliberately. Because you're my woman. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped out, leaving her standing there, stunned. Does he really think he's Takashi Kaneshiro or something, this arrogant, self-absorbed man? She muttered to herself, feeling ridiculous. Why was she arguing with this conceited man? She patted the wrinkles on her clothes and strode away. Mia Dolan, being new, didn't have her own car. She took a taxi to the set. Hey, sweetheart, where did you rush off to yesterday? Something going on? Gatsby Lucas approached her, still in costume. Mia Dolan shrugged, not wanting to answer, nothing. Come on, do you even consider me a friend? Gatsby Lucas frowned at her, then sighed. Alright, I give up on you. Go get your makeup done. I'm looking forward to our scenes together. Mia Dolan pressed her lips together, nodded, and headed to the makeup room. Inside, Cersei Lannister, the lead actress, was getting her makeup done. Cersei Lannister was undeniably beautiful, the kind of beauty that left a lasting impression. Spotting an empty chair nearby, Mia Dolan sat down, intending to wait quietly. Hey, who are you? Who said you could sit there? A sharp female voice snapped from behind. Mia Dolan turned to see a woman with an assertive appearance and short hair. Is this chair yours? She replied innocently, her face a picture of naivety. Humph, do you think you can sit wherever you want? Know your place. The woman's voice was piercing, clearly taunting her. Not wanting to make enemies, Mia Dolan stood up. As she passed by, her foot caught on something, causing her to stumble backward. Crash. Everything on the makeup table crashed to the ground, and her head struck the edge, immediately causing it to bleed. So weak. You can't even stand properly, serves you right. Bella Lannister. Cersei Lannister's voice rang out indifferently. Stop making noise, it's annoying. Mia Dolan clutched her head, feeling a warm liquid trickle down. She lay sprawled on the floor, a crowd gathering, but not one hand reached out to help her. They were all here to watch a show. Didn't you hear? Get out. You're annoying, sneered Bella Lannister. Bitterness rose in Mia Dolan's heart. She hadn't clearly seen who had tripped her, but she had seen the cold indifference in everyone's faces. Clearly, no one here would help her, and staying would only lead to further humiliation. Biting her lip, she clutched her head and walked out. Just outside, she ran into Assistant Rose. Seeing her condition, Assistant Rose immediately sensed something was wrong and asked anxiously. What happened? Why are you holding your head? Mia Dolan forced a weak smile on her pale face. It's nothing. Just hit my head accidentally. And you call this nothing? Assistant Rose exclaimed, alarmed, examining her wound, which was still bleeding. But Mia Dolan couldn't afford to delay the filming, as a newcomer, it was normal to be sidelined by those with more connections. So she couldn't let anyone catch her at a disadvantage. Assistant Rose, just bandage it up lightly. Assistant Rose understood, sighed, and went to buy some bandages to stop the bleeding. Assistant Rose, do you know someone named Bella Lannister? Mia Dolan asked calmly, her big, dark eyes flashing with a hint of coldness. Assistant Rose thought for a moment, realization dawning on her, I know who that is. She's Cersei Lannister's cousin, Bella Lannister, who just debuted. Originally, Cersei Lannister wanted Bella Lannister to have your role. Assistant Rose's words confirmed what Mia Dolan had already suspected. She hadn't known why she'd been targeted, but now it made sense. Did she give you a hard time just now? No one gave me any trouble, Mia Dolan said with a faint smile, gently patting Assistant Rose's hand. Assistant Rose gave her a knowing look, understanding her silence in this treacherous world, where grievances often went unspoken. Mia, I have high hopes for you. You'll surpass all of them one day. Mia Dolan simply smiled, saying nothing, but her eyes shone with determination. She had already stepped into this whirlpool, she would rise, prove herself, and show them all she wasn't just a privileged daughter. She was just an ordinary person, flesh and blood. The melancholy on her beautiful face faded as she sighed. It wasn't until she held the script in her hands that Mia Dolan understood that expectation Gatsby Lucas had referred to. In this scene, she had to forcibly kiss Gatsby Lucas, who was supposed to resist. Her lips twitched. Fine, a kiss was just a kiss, it was acting, after all. In the afternoon, dressed in a cheapao, she embodied grace, her eyes tinged with melancholy. They recited their lines with soft intensity, filling the air with a delicate, sorrowful ambience. But no one noticed, a young man dressed in mysterious black attire had appeared on set. With a gaze as hungry as a wolf, he stared intensely at the cheongsam on Mia Dolan. She looked heartbreakingly beautiful with it on, her curves fully displayed. He looked at the high slit of the dress, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. Damn, why did the slit go all the way up to her thigh? Mia Dolan, as if wanting to hold on to Gatsby Lucas, quickly embraced him, sobbing softly into her lines. The pupils of Tommy DeVito suddenly contracted, his handsome face showing a hint of displeasure. But before he could gather his thoughts, Mia Dolan had already rushed up to Gatsby Lucas, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed him passionately. Boom! Everyone around immediately felt a cold aura, creeping from their feet, spreading through their bodies. Mr. Thorne. His thin lips tightened, and from a side angle, his facial features were sharp, yet it was as if they were covered in frost. Yes, boss. Call the director over here. With that, he glanced meaningfully at Mia Dolan, then turned and walked away. Mr. Thorne watched his retreating figure and couldn't help but sigh. This girl was probably in for some major trouble. In the hotel room, Tommy DeVito leaned lazily on the sofa. Holding a cigarette between his fingers, he didn't smoke, letting the white smoke swirl up. Knock, 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 3 knocks sounded, neither too loud nor too soft, with intervals that were neither too long nor too short, as if to express the caution of the person knocking. They seemed afraid of disturbing Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito's deep blue eyes lit up, the corners of his mouth curled into a cryptic smile, giving off an aura of mystery. He merely looked at Mr. Thorne, who understood and went to open the door. Director Carson peeked around, finally settling his gaze on the exquisite young man sitting on the sofa. The elegant man looked out the window, exuding an air of luxury, a unique aura of authority that unconsciously made others feel inferior. Director Carson stepped forward, bowing slightly and smiling obsequiously. Mr. DeVito, did you want to see me? Tommy DeVito responded absent-mindedly. Director Carson bent down, unable to see Tommy DeVito's expression clearly, but feeling an invisible pressure weighing down the space around them. His breathing unconsciously slowed down. Mr. Thorne, give it to him. Mr. Thorne nodded and placed something resembling a script in front of Director Carson. "You may go now." Director Carson looked puzzled and glanced up at Tommy DeVito. "Mr. DeVito, this is a script." Not daring to ask anything further, since Tommy DeVito was the sponsor, Director Carson simply needed to focus on filming. "Yes, Mr. DeVito, you rest well, I'll take my leave now." Tommy DeVito took a drag on his cigarette, flicking the ash into the ashtray, his expression finally softening a bit. "Shall I go fetch Miss Dolan?" "No need." The bitch tweakak. A famed five-star hotel in Aton, the view here was extraordinary, almost every artist loved dining here. This place was indeed an entertainment paradise, with almost everything available. Moreover, paparazzi rarely lurked around, as a few reporters had gone missing here in the past. Since then, all paparazzi considered this a forbidden zone, no one dared to venture near. In a quiet room, a woman was doing her best to please, her gaze trailing sensually over the man in front of her. The man had his eyes closed, sitting silently on the large bed, his face expressionless, despite the woman's eagerness. The woman gently stroked her long hair, beads of sweat glistening on her face, her moist eyes gazing at him, boldly sitting on his lap. "Mr. DeVito, did you call Nguyen here just to have her watch?" Regina George pouted, pressing closer to him, wrapping her arms around his neck, her breath scented like a delicate fragrance. Looking at the strikingly beautiful face in front of her, even she, as a woman, couldn't resist. Her breathing grew heavier, and she couldn't hold back, kissing him. Sensing something, Tommy DeVito turned his face away in disdain, causing her kiss to fall on his vest. A look of grievance immediately spread across her delicate face. Tommy DeVito remained cold, showing no intention of going further, speaking indifferently, "Try to make me satisfied." Regina George's face instantly lit up with joy. Although she had been by Tommy DeVito's side for a long time, they had never crossed boundaries. Sometimes, she even wondered if there was something wrong with Tommy DeVito. So, upon hearing him say this, Regina George was ecstatic, eagerly clinging to his neck. Tommy DeVito slightly furrowed his brows but didn't push the woman on him away. His gaze revealed a hint of animalistic desire, pressing Regina George down. Even though his body responded, he felt no emotional stirrings. He was simply tired of torturing himself, wanting to convince himself that Mia Dolan was just a normal woman, no different from any other. But at that moment, a gentle piano melody started playing. Tommy DeVito frowned, pausing for a moment, his rational mind regaining control as he stood to grab his phone. After taking the call, Tommy DeVito's expression immediately darkened, exuding an oppressive chill. Regina George pouted playfully, snuggling close to him. "Tommy, shall we continue?" Tommy DeVito coldly pushed her away and strode out. The second basement of Bitch Tweakak was a bar filled with unruly crowds. Mia Dolan sat next to Gatsby Lucas, genuinely uncomfortable in such a setting. Moreover, what happened with Tommy DeVito last time was still fresh in her mind. She was somewhat afraid of this place. "Hey, Gatsby Lucas, I'm leaving." Gatsby Lucas grabbed her hand. "Where to?" "It's been a long day, relax a bit." "Relax here?" "Really?" Mia Dolan smirked, not fitting into this kind of environment. "You don't get it. We artists are very lonely, so we like crowded places. At least, I do." "Lonely? I wouldn't have guessed." Mia Dolan eyed him up and down, everything about him seemed to scream ladies' man. "Nonsense, I'm selective, quality over quantity." After saying that, Gatsby Lucas winked at her. "So, are you interested in me?" Just as they were talking, a charming short-haired woman approached, directly wrapping her arms around Gatsby Lucas's waist. "Gatsby, it's been so long since you last came to see me. Have you grown tired of me?" Gatsby Lucas looked flustered, quickly glancing at Mia Dolan. Mia Dolan merely turned away, pretending not to see, though inside, she felt nothing but disdain for this man. Ahem, it's just a misunderstanding, all of it is a misunderstanding, Mia. Actually, Mia Dolan raised a finger to his lips, signaling him to stop talking. Please call me Miss Dolan, and by the way, that lady just now had quite a nice figure. Oh dear, it really is a misunderstanding, why do you always misunderstand me? Gatsby Lucas scratched his head in frustration. Mia Dolan chuckled softly, her laughter pure and natural. But she didn't know that at that very moment, someone else was watching. Miss Dolan, the boss is requesting your presence. A deep voice sounded beside her, and Mia Dolan froze, turning to see Mr. Thorne. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew Mr. Thorne, he was Tommy DeVito's right-hand man. Why was he here? The boss is requesting her. Did that mean Tommy DeVito was here too? The smile on her small face immediately vanished. Where is he? Please, follow me, Miss Dolan. Hey, who are you? Mia, don't go. He's definitely a bad guy, Gatsby Lucas said. Cautiously. Miss Dolan, the boss isn't in the best of moods, Mr. Thorne gave Gatsby Lucas a pointed look, as if warning him. Mia Dolan bit her lip. She knew very well that man had a hot temper. Although he seemed calm on the surface, as if nothing was wrong, he was capable of ruining her behind the scenes. Gatsby Lucas, I know him. She explained softly before following Mr. Thorne. In a corner of the bar, a man sat quietly, almost like a statue, yet the aura emanating from him was impossible to ignore. Mia Dolan pouted, choosing the seat furthest from him, and casually asked, You didn't come here just to look for me, did you? Do you think you're still the same Mia Dolan as before? He asked, his tone mocking, a sneer tugging at the corner of his mouth. Mia Dolan's face changed slightly, irritation flashing in her eyes. I'm still me. 3 years ago, I was me, and 3 years later, I'm still me. And your heart? Those two cold words made Mia Dolan's expression shift completely. Her heart. Her heart had long changed, becoming cold and desolate. 3 years ago, she could pretend to be innocent, live carefree, the life she wanted. But 3 years later, she had to fight for everything herself. Tommy DeVito, did you come here just to irritate me? Irritate. Those words made Tommy DeVito's face darken, his hand unconsciously pressing against his chest, where the lingering pain of an old wound ached. She lived a carefree life, as if nothing had ever happened. And yet he, for the past 3 years, had endured endless torment. This cruel woman. Suddenly, someone tried to run over, but the bodyguards blocked them. Mia Dolan. Mia Dolan. After calling her name twice, they were restrained by the bodyguards. Mia Dolan jumped up, looking at Tommy DeVito with a face full of hostility. Her big, clear eyes made people unconsciously let down their guard, giving the impression that she was approachable. But now, her eyes were filled with loathing, looking at him as if he had committed some heinous crime. Tommy DeVito stayed hidden in the shadows, his thin lips pressed together, his gaze becoming deep. It was clear that Mia Dolan was protecting this man. In his mind, he suddenly pictured the scene from that afternoon, when Mia Dolan kissed him. Tommy DeVito admitted that at this moment, jealousy was surging within him, as if his own possession had been taken by someone else. Tommy DeVito, let my friend go. She looked like a small animal that had been provoked, glaring at him with eyes full of hatred and anger. Ahem, Mia Dolan, I'm okay. Gatsby Lucas, now restrained, had to bow his head and couldn't see who was inside. He just assumed that Mia Dolan had gotten into trouble with some gangsters, and he regretted getting involved. Surely, his presence only added to her troubles. But leaving Mia Dolan with this type of person made him even more uneasy. Tommy DeVito's deep eyes glinted coldly, sitting motionless like a statue. His gaze, especially, was like that of a wild beast about to unleash its fury. Little girl, come sit here. He gently patted the seat next to him, his voice calm, even his tone was as steady as water, as serene as a lake. Mia Dolan frowned, looking back at Gatsby Lucas before hesitantly stepping forward. This action seemed to further provoke Tommy DeVito. Before she could sit down, he had already grabbed her wrist, pulling her into his embrace. The familiar scent of mint surrounded her, a refreshing fragrance that now felt suffocating. Yet now, her eyes were filled with hatred, looking at him as though he had committed an unforgivable crime. His breathing was steady, slow, like a melody that lulled her soul. A faint chill crept up from her feet, freezing her delicate body. "What do you want?" She glared at him, pain radiating from her slender arm gripped tightly in his firm hand. "Do you care about him?" Tommy DeVito raised an eyebrow, a simple gesture that made Mia Dolan feel like she'd fallen into an icy pit. That gesture clearly showed he was angry, and if she kept resisting, he might actually do something to Gatsby Lucas. "We're just co-stars." "Oh, really?" "He seems to care a lot about you," he said slowly, especially recalling how naturally the two interacted earlier. Every time he thought about that scene, his heart felt like it was weighed down by a heavy stone, suffocating him. Mia Dolan scoffed, bristling like a cactus. "That's his problem, it has nothing to do with me." "Is that so?" Her response seemed to satisfy Tommy DeVito, who signaled with his eyes, and Mr. Thorne immediately ordered his men to take Gatsby Lucas away. "Hey, where are you taking him?" Mia Dolan jumped up in alarm, shouting loudly. Her waist was held tightly as he pulled her back, his deep voice whispered in her ear. "Didn't you say you didn't care about him? Why so worried now? This damn man. Was he doubting her with every word?" She was just instinctively concerned for Gatsby Lucas. Mia Dolan had once witnessed the terrifying side of Tommy DeVito, and it left a fear buried deep in her bones. Just being near him now made her anxious about the impact on those around her. "I'm afraid you'll kill him and end up in jail." "Who would help me run DeVito family then?" Tommy DeVito laughed softly, his handsome face as sharp as jade, his long fingers lifting her chin, gazing intently at her. "Little wife." She shot back, glaring defiantly at him. "You suit my taste well," he whispered, and his hot kiss fell upon her lips. Mia Dolan couldn't withstand his fervor, her small hands clinging tightly to his arm as if her breath was slipping away. Her rational mind completely abandoned her, all thoughts vanished, and she allowed him to kiss her lips freely. When he finally released her, she clung to his arm like a drowning person clutching a lifeline, gasping for air. His scent enveloped her, familiar yet chilling. Tommy DeVito looked at her with those deep blue eyes, finally placing a cold finger on her lips, whispering, "Don't let any other man touch your lips again." "Huh?" She stared at him, surprised. He leaned down, his warm lips brushing across her cheek, sending a shiver down her spine. "Because every inch of you, from top to bottom, belongs to me." That possessive, domineering statement left Mia Dolan breathless, her eyes wide with shock, though she quickly returned to her usual composure. "What do you want? Revenge?" "I want your body," he teased, lifting her chin, their gazes meeting. His eyes were deep, like a still ocean, impossible to read, impossible to guess what he was thinking. Mysterious, cold, she couldn't find the words to describe him. This man. "I want your body," those 5 words made Mia Dolan's heart sink. Was he just toying with her, making her pay? Was it really that simple? Did she still expect anything? Was she truly mad? Did she hope Tommy DeVito would love her? What madness, he would suffocate her to death if that happened. Fine, only for 6 months. She looked at him defiantly, planning her escape in a year, when she'd finally be free from him. 6 months, and I'll have your heart. He whispered by her ear, gentle as a lover's promise. But at this moment, Mia Dolan didn't think so. This man was like a ticking bomb, ready to explode and turn her to ashes at any moment. "You won't get my heart. That's not up to you. Tommy DeVito. What's the point of arguing with me here?" Mia Dolan pouted, her little face full of displeasure. Body and heart, she didn't care about either, she just wanted to go home. Then let's do something more interesting. His eyes flashed mischievously as he wrapped his arm around her waist and walked toward the rooftop. Mia Dolan was held tightly against him. She struggled, but then noticed a lipstick stain on his shirt. There was even a faint scent of perfume, she hadn't noticed at the bar, but alone with him now, it was clear. He'd obviously been with another woman, and things had been intense. The lipstick stain even reached his collar. Tommy DeVito. He looked down at the girl who barely reached his shoulder, a faint smile playing on his lips. You can't wait anymore. Wait, my foot. She pushed him away in irritation, stepping back cautiously. You're so lustful. Just done with one woman and now here to tease me. Tommy DeVito looked at her, surprised, quickly noticing the lipstick stain on his collar, amusement flashing across his face. Are you jealous? Jealous, my foot. For your health's sake, let's just end this tonight. Sparing me is sparing yourself too. She brushed a wrinkle off her shirt, her tone attempting a negotiation, but her face showing clear disgust. You think I can't? He raised an eyebrow, as if she didn't realize how much men hated being told they couldn't. Seeing his wolf-like gaze, Mia Dolan instinctively shrank back, feeling the air around her grow colder. I didn't say anything, you're the one who said it. The smile on Tommy DeVito's face grew wider as he took off his jacket, covering the security camera before slamming his fist into the elevator button. A series of beeps sounded, and Mia Dolan screamed in fear, curling up in the corner. You're insane. I haven't even started yet. He chuckled, slowly approaching her. His steps were intentionally slow, tormenting her heart. Tommy DeVito. I warn you, he pulled her up, forcing her to look into his eyes, his lips curving into a faint smile. Now, tell me, what do you want to warn me about? Speak up. What do you want to warn me about? His smile grew deeper, his large hand resting on her lips, which he had just kissed, caressing them. With the current atmosphere, and the tingling sensation on her lips, Mia Dolan involuntarily held her breath. Biting her lip, her eyes sparkled with cunning as she laughed in a sweet, appeasing tone. Brother Tommy, please don't be like this, it's so scary. Oh. I haven't even started. Didn't you say I couldn't? His breath warmed her ear as he leaned in. The warmth of his breath by her ear made her whole body tense. Unable to help herself, she pulled back, but he suddenly bit her earlobe gently. Brother Tommy, I was wrong. Please don't do this, okay? How about we go somewhere else? She looked at him with fear, her glistening eyes covered by a thin layer of mist, looking pitiful. For a moment, Tommy DeVito was stunned, then laughed. Little girl, are you done with your act? All day he'd been restraining his desire, and if you were to be placated by a few words from her, he would be too easy. She was dumbfounded, but then quickly realized that he had seen through her. Tommy DeVito, you bastard, why are you trapping me here? I want to go home. Don't you think this is thrilling? His tone was mischievous, his breathing quickening. Mia Dolan froze, instinctively pressing herself against the elevator door, but it couldn't stop his touch. He gently lifted her chin, his gaze deep. Let's see if I can or not. Mia Dolan was really backed into a corner by him, her face darkening in anger as she bit down on his shoulder. Tommy DeVito, for heaven's sake, act like a decent man. After being with a woman, at least shower and change clothes. Stop coming here to disgust me. Her eyes were filled with disgust, as if he were something filthy, and in her eyes, Tommy DeVito was exactly that. His thin lips tightened, his gaze darkening further. Well done, Mia Dolan had angered him. Tommy DeVito's eyes flared with rage as he looked at her, seeming ready to devour her whole. Did she actually dare to call him filthy? His self-control, which he always prided himself on, was now completely shattered by Mia Dolan. This girl certainly knew how to push his buttons. His large hand gripped her chin as he bit down hard on her lips. She pounded his chest in fury, muffled protests escaping her. "You jerk, if you dare to, what will you do?" he asked mockingly. This vile man, how could he be so rough with her? "You," she gasped in pain, tears escaping her eyes. "Little girl, you should know the consequences of provoking me." Tommy DeVito's eyes grew darker, his breath grew heavier, and he began his intense assault. Mia Dolan sobbed, punching and kicking him, but she didn't realize that her resistance only fueled his wild desire. He held her tightly, gently wiping the tears from her cheeks before softly kissing her lips, the kiss as sweet as honey. She turned her head away in disgust, refusing to touch him at all. "Tommy DeVito, I hate you. I despise you," she cried, biting her lip in anger, her body trembling with each word. Tommy DeVito shuddered slightly, then let out a mocking laugh, his eyes flashing with a cruel glint as he gripped her chin. "Little girl, you're the last person who has the right to hate me." She looked up at him, stunned, unable to see anything in his eyes. A hint of astonishment flickered in her heart. Why would he say that? 3 years ago, all she did was reject his marriage proposal. Why was he this angry? Tommy DeVito said nothing more. He wrapped an arm around her waist, leading her out of the elevator, her faint fragrance lingering at his nose. The door to the rooftop room opened, and a cold gust blew in. With tears still on her cheeks, he led her to the sofa and poured her a glass of water. "Do you want something to eat? Do you think I'm in any mood to eat? Especially with a brute like you who forced me. Just looking at you makes me nauseous." Mia Dolan's words made Tommy DeVito's face darken. He smirked and pressed her down onto the sofa. His deep eyes held a complex emotion as he leaned down, kissing her lips. "Not satisfied yet? What are you talking about? Are you sulking because I didn't satisfy you? Is that it?" At this moment, Tommy DeVito seemed like a ruffian, losing his usual cold demeanor. She took a sharp breath, trembling, as the places he had touched still ached. She was in no state to even consider satisfaction or dissatisfaction. "Mr. DeVito, his gaze was filled with anger, and she dared not say another word. "I prefer you call me Brother Tommy." Fine, she would endure it. What else could she do with this insufferable man? She couldn't beat him in a fight anyway. "Brother Tommy, I'm tired. Could you please stop tormenting me?" Though she said this, her eyes betrayed her, filled with distance and fear. Clearly, Tommy DeVito had left her with no good memories. Tommy DeVito acted as if he hadn't heard, tossing his jacket aside and then, right in front of her, taking off his white shirt and tossing it into the trash. Mia Dolan looked at the shirt in the trash, her lips twitching. What kind of game was he playing? "There's food in the fridge. When I'm done with my shower, you'd better be full," Tommy DeVito said coldly. "Hey," Tommy DeVito paused, his tone indifferent. "What? Seen enough of the top and want to see the bottom? I don't have that kind of interest." Mia Dolan pouted, struggling to stand. "Make sure to take a long shower." Tommy DeVito looked her over from head to toe, a faint smile on his lips. "Make sure you're full." With that, he turned and went into the bathroom, leaving her in the living room without a worry. Mia Dolan's eyes lit up as she quickly ran to the door, only to discover it had a fingerprint sensor. So, only Tommy DeVito could open it. No wonder he was so at ease with her in his place. Biting her lip, she ran over to the window and looked outside, only to feel dizzy. This was the top floor, right in the city center, giving a full view of half the city. Mia Dolan worried about her own intelligence for a moment. Even if it were only the 3rd floor, she wouldn't dare to jump. With a sigh, she pressed her forehead, feeling despondent for a few minutes before finally heading to the kitchen to cook. Thankfully, his kitchen was well stocked, but to save effort, she just made 2 bowls of noodles. As she listened to the sound of running water from the bathroom, she felt her heart tighten with each drop. 1 bowl of noodles later, the water stopped, and Tommy DeVito stepped out with only a towel around his waist. Seeing her sitting obediently at the dining table, the corners of his mouth lifted into a faint smile. Good. Of course. Mia Dolan giggled. Do you want some noodles? I'd rather eat you. He held her chin and kissed her deeply. Their breaths mingled, and he carried the faint scent of soap. Mia Dolan felt herself becoming intoxicated, completely lost in him. All her senses seemed to stop functioning as her small hand rested on his shoulder. Her eyes barely stayed open as she softly asked, "Are you really not going to eat the noodles? I'm only interested in you." He lowered his head to find her lips, only to be startled as he discovered that the girl in his arms had already fallen asleep. His expression shifted, and he gently tapped her cheek. Little girl. She was deeply asleep, showing no signs of waking up. His face grew darker. Quickly carrying her to the inner room, he anxiously made a phone call. His hand gently massaged her fingers as he repeatedly called her name. Little girl, wake up. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door, and he hurried to open it, nodding at Troy Barnes. Come in. Troy Barnes, hair disheveled and jacket barely on, quickly asked, Big brother, what's the emergency? You called me in such a rush. Tommy DeVito didn't have time to explain, dragging Troy Barnes into the bedroom, pointing to the girl on the bed. The little girl suddenly fell into a deep sleep, and no matter what I do, she won't wake up. Troy Barnes looked at the usually calm man in front of him, anxious and frantic, thinking he must be hallucinating. Big brother had always been composed, even if the world collapsed around him. Was he really this shaken over a girl? Once again, Troy Barnes confirmed to himself that Mia Dolan was truly his brother's fated disaster. The disaster from 3 years ago, now continued to the present. Without hesitation, Troy Barnes took her pulse and examined her eyes. He frowned, looking at Mia Dolan with a puzzled expression. Well? Is she poisoned? Doesn't seem like poison. Troy Barnes turned to him, surprised. It's more like she's just sleeping. But I can't wake her. Brother, don't panic. She's only sleeping. Do you have any sleeping pills in your room? Troy Barnes's words made Tommy DeVito's face darken as he rushed to the medicine cabinet. He pulled out a box of sleeping pills and noticed that 4 pills were missing. Troy Barnes smirked, patting the dark-faced man on the shoulder. She definitely took sleeping pills, but if it was 4 pills, she might need to go to the hospital for a stomach pump. She only took 2 pills. Tommy DeVito's eyes deepened as he looked at the untouched bowl of noodles. The pills must have been in the noodles. She wanted him to take them, yet she put them in her own bowl too. This girl. His face turned cold. You can go now, Heineen. There's nothing more to worry about. Big brother, take it easy. She is, after all, just a young woman. Troy Barnes glanced worriedly at the sleeping girl on the bed and sighed. Tommy DeVito pressed his lips together, his gaze icy and deep. Troy Barnes shuddered, feeling an odd chill, and quickly turned to leave the room. No way did he want to face Big Brother's wrath. Tommy DeVito looked at the sleeping girl, his face dark with anger. Just to avoid being near him, she had taken sleeping pills. Did you think I would let you go because of this? He sneered, gripping her chin, filled with hatred, as though he could crush her. Only silence answered him, no response at all. A layer of rage burned in Tommy DeVito's eyes as he coldly tore her clothes away. His gaze icy, he lowered his head, biting down hard on her collarbone. Ah, that hurts. She definitely took sleeping pills, but even if it was just 4 pills, she needs a stomach pump. Tommy DeVito growled in anger, biting her a few more times to vent his frustration. This damned girl would regret her little trickery with him. After all, they had a whole year ahead to play this game. Sleeping pills or not, it made no difference to him. A mocking smile crept onto his lips. As dawn broke, Tommy DeVito sat back in the chair, feet propped up on the coffee table, a cigarette in his hand releasing a thin trail of smoke. He closed his eyes, pressing his tired eyes, bloodshot from a sleepless night. Standing up, he stretched and walked back into the bedroom. The little beauty still lay in the same position as the night before, showing no signs of waking. He made a call, and soon someone delivered fresh clothes. After a shower, he came out in just a towel, his anger from the night still lingering. But the little enchantress still hadn't woken up, and he suddenly felt like going in there and strangling her. As Tommy DeVito wiped his wet hair, he heard a faint groan from her, indicating she was finally awake. A faint smile appeared on his face as he walked into the room, still wearing nothing but the towel. The bedroom door swung open, startling the little beauty inside. She gasped, instinctively pulling back. Her whole body ached as she twisted her neck slightly. "Why aren't you wearing clothes?" Mia Dolan shrieked, staring at him, a suspicion forming in her mind about what might have happened last night. Could it be that he liked an unresponsive person? She had slept like a log, yet he still. Thinking of this, she gasped, her face full of anger. "Tommy DeVito, what's wrong with you? Even with someone who's practically a log, you'd still go for it. Is this your taste? Truly, peculiar. Little girl, you talk too much. You think I'm that desperate?" Tommy DeVito sneered, yanking the blanket off her. Mia Dolan screamed, but quickly realized that she was still fully dressed, and her face turned beet red. She looked at Tommy DeVito in embarrassment, forcing a sheepish smile. "Well, even if you didn't do anything, you still thought about it, so my criticism isn't entirely wrong." "I really feel like breaking every tooth in your mouth," Tommy DeVito growled, gripping her chin tightly. For some reason, all the anger he'd been harboring through the night dissipated when he saw Mia Dolan awake. "Let go." Mia Dolan huffed, brushing his hand away as she angrily made her way to the bathroom. She hadn't taken more than a few steps when Tommy DeVito caught her again. He let out a cold huff, grabbing her collar, and asked casually, "Aren't you going to explain anything to me?" Mia Dolan forced a nervous laugh. "Explain what?" "I was just really tired last night. You know how exhausting it is to be filming all the time lately." "Is that so?" he sniffed, his tone full of suspicion, as though waiting for her to explain herself. Mia Dolan let out an awkward laugh, feeling helpless. She had been forced into this situation, and anyway, last night she had only fallen asleep, not done anything. Surely he hadn't figured out the missing sleeping pills so quickly. A small, secret joy bubbled up within her as she brushed his hand aside. "Oh, come on, brother Tommy, have I ever lied to you? I really was tired. Little girl, maybe I truly shouldn't have gotten involved with you." The offhand remark from Tommy DeVito left Mia Dolan momentarily stunned, but she quickly understood his meaning. It was just a failed proposal. Did he really need to say that? Men who were this sensitive and fragile were hard to deal with. Thinking about it, Mia Dolan's mouth twitched, her face showing a bit of helplessness. And as if things weren't bad enough, she had gotten tangled up with someone like him. "Aren't you really going to explain anything to me?" "Think carefully," Tommy DeVito said in a threatening tone. Mia Dolan thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't know what to explain to you." "Fine." Tommy DeVito's expression darkened as he walked over to the sofa and sat down, his tone suddenly icy. "Then explain why there are 4 missing sleeping pills." Mia Dolan's face froze instantly, he had noticed. She regretted not explaining when he asked her earlier. With an awkward smile, she sat beside him, her tone softening, "Brother Tommy, it's not too late for me to explain now, right?" He raised an eyebrow, his handsome face showing a knowing smile. Now you want to explain? He sneered. How do you plan to explain it? That you were so tired you just wanted to fall asleep quickly, so you took 2 sleeping pills. Mia Dolan gave a sheepish smile. That was exactly what she'd been planning to say. Well, since you already know what I was going to say, it means we're really on the same wavelength. She flattered him, inching closer. Tommy DeVito tilted his head, watching her silently, his voice cold. Then why don't you guess what I'm thinking right now? You. Perhaps because they were so close, Mia Dolan felt an invisible pressure bearing down on her, especially when looking directly into his eyes. She always felt as though those mesmerizing blue eyes could draw out her soul at any moment. Unconsciously, she glanced away, biting her lip, her whole demeanor tense. You're thinking of ways to kill me. Humph. I'm not thinking of killing you. I just want to make your life a living hell. Little girl, have you been enjoying your time with me? He asked coolly, his tone completely unchanging. A chill crept up her spine, making her shiver, the cold seeping into her bones. Why are you asking that all of a sudden? We've only just started spending time together. She forced a smile, but although she had chosen a career in acting, in front of Tommy DeVito, she felt she had no acting skills whatsoever. Because every time she tried to act, his sharp eyes would see through her instantly. And now that he had figured her out, she felt like she had nowhere left to retreat, a suffocating pressure surrounding her. I just want to know, are you genuinely happy, or are you just putting up with it? Tommy DeVito's words made her feel incredibly pressured. She took a deep breath and responded calmly, Tommy DeVito. She didn't get a chance to finish before his finger pressed against her lips. His gaze was as calm as still water, his voice cold. I told you I don't like it when you call me by my name. Call me Tommy, or Brother Tommy, as you usually do. A wave of frustration rose within Mia Dolan. This man. How could he say something like that without the slightest hint of embarrassment? She curled her lips and nodded slightly. All right, Brother Tommy, but you've forgotten one very important thing. Tommy DeVito's gaze darkened slightly, and he nodded. Go on. There's nothing between us but a transaction. Her small face was serious, not noticing that his expression had already darkened. After a moment's thought, she continued, before, we only had a business arrangement. I'm with you because of Dolan T, isn't that right? Tommy DeVito's face grew unusually cold, and after a long silence, he finally spoke. Yes, that's true. Then that's settled, isn't it? Mia Dolan seemed in high spirits, letting out a sigh of relief. You already knew, right? Now that we're clear, there's no need to talk about being happy or not. Tommy DeVito looked at her coldly, his hands clenched, veins standing out, sending a chill down anyone's spine. The girl across from him didn't seem to notice, standing up and stretching before smiling and saying, I have a scene to shoot today, so I should get going. This afternoon, come to Van Thatch Dow. HM. What for? Mia Dolan asked with a puzzled expression. Tommy DeVito pursed his lips, his voice flat. To sign a contract. I want you to become an artist under my company. Mia Dolan thought for a moment, a bit confused. Why? I could choose to sign with other companies. If you sign me directly, won't that lead to misunderstandings? Misunderstand what? He scoffed. Misunderstand our relationship? But our relationship is exactly as it appears. His words were both ruthless and painfully truthful, leaving Mia Dolan momentarily speechless. Although it was indeed that kind of relationship, she was still a woman with her own pride. His blunt words truly stung. Why would you want to sign with another company? To get away from me? Tommy DeVito seemed to understand her thoughts perfectly and spoke casually, don't even think about it. Tommy DeVito, you can't be this overbearing. Mia Dolan bit her lip, for she had indeed been thinking about getting away from Tommy DeVito, to avoid being entangled with him. And it was clear he had anticipated this, damn it. This was all so frustrating. She bit her lip, giving him a resentful look, her tone sharp. Even if I sign with your company, I'd just be another artist in the roster. Whether I'm there or not wouldn't make a difference. Tommy DeVito smirked, finding her conversation amusing because she was so expressive, her emotions plain on her face, her expressions vibrant. Having you in my company would make things more convenient. Convenient for what? To keep you as my mistress. Mia Dolan's face turned bright red, not expecting him to be so shameless. All right then, I might have a scene to shoot this afternoon, so I won't be able to go, Mia Dolan said, turning her face away. She no longer cared about looking good, all she wanted was to leave this place, to leave him. Otherwise, the pressure inside her would be too much to bear. Can't go. Tommy DeVito's 3 words were spoken softly, but they seemed to scratch at her heart, making it skip a beat. I'll have someone pick you up at noon. You don't have any scenes this afternoon. How do you know that? Maybe I'll get lucky and be chosen for this role, Mia Dolan murmured, slightly bothered by his domineering attitude. Tommy DeVito raised his head, his sharp gaze fixed on her as he replied slowly, each word clear and certain, I just know. Mia Dolan suddenly felt like she was being watched by a wolf. She took a deep breath, quickly looking away. Every time their eyes met, she never won, his gaze was always too piercing. Fine, I really need to go now. I don't like it when you act so indifferent. Just as she reached the door, Tommy DeVito's deep voice sounded again. Her steps faltered, a slight irritation flashing across her face as she turned back to look at him. Brother Tommy, I'll definitely come, whether I get chosen or not. Can I go now? Seeing her resolute expression, his initially stern face softened, and there was even a trace of tenderness in his eyes. Yes, you can go. Mia Dolan gave a faint snort, opened the door, and walked out. Tommy DeVito couldn't quite understand his own feelings, it always seemed like his emotions swayed with hers. No matter how angry he had been the night before, once she woke up, he continued treating her the same. His hand unconsciously reached toward his chest, his eyes narrowing with a hint of coldness. This was not good. This was really not good. His goal was not to be with Mia Dolan but to torment her. How could she, after 3 years, still appear in front of him so unscathed, as if nothing had ever happened? Did she know what he had endured for those 3 years? A mocking smile spread across his face, his entire demeanor cold, like a demon in the dark. Mia Dolan took a cab to the film set. As a supporting actress with a minor role, she hadn't been assigned a personal car yet. And when she arrived, no one seemed to notice her presence. In the restroom, she splashed cold water on her face. She hadn't dared to wash her face at the hotel, fearing she'd be late by even a minute and that Director Carson would find fault with her. If that happened, she would be left crying with no one to help her. At that moment, the conversation between 2 women outside caught her attention. Who knows who this Mia Dolan is? She used to be just an assistant, and now she's got a supporting role. Exactly. And I heard she has someone backing her. Really? Who is it? Do you know? I'm not sure, but it must be someone influential. Why else would they change the script? Her role clearly has more scenes than before. Is that true? Mia Dolan frowned. Her role had more scenes. She hadn't noticed that. She had just felt busier than before, but she hadn't realized it was because her role had expanded. She stepped out, giving the 2 women a cold look. When they saw her, they fell silent, washed their hands, and left. Mia Dolan frowned deeply, puzzled. She pulled out her script and looked through it, finding that all her scenes were indeed scheduled for the morning. She had nothing in the afternoon. Could it be that Tommy DeVito had actually altered it? A strange feeling crept over her, but she remembered her arrangement with him and felt her heart calm down. Thanks to Tommy DeVito's influence, she could finally shine. Wasn't that the point of it all? Realizing this, she felt at ease, a faint smile forming on her lips. She turned to the later pages and noticed that all the kissing scenes had vanished. She remembered seeing some kissing scenes in earlier versions of the script, but now they had vanished like smoke. "Oh, Mia Dolan, you're here early." Director Carson greeted her with a smile, his words clearly flattering. Feeling a bit uncomfortable, Mia Dolan forced a smile. "Yes, isn't everyone else here too?" She deliberately looked around and saw Cersei Lannister and her assistant already present. "That's true, but Mia Dolan, are you free tonight? How about joining us for dinner?" Director Carson asked with a smile. Mia Dolan frowned slightly, remembering she had to go to Tommy DeVito's company to sign a contract in the afternoon. Who knew if he'd even let her leave? "Who else will be there? I hope I'm not the only one." It wasn't about being overly cautious but rather that this industry wasn't as clean as it seemed, and she couldn't ignore that. "Your sister, Tam, will also be joining us." But, as luck would have it, Lya's innocent remark was overheard by Cersei Lannister, who let out a sneer of annoyance, crossing her arms and giving Mia Dolan a disdainful look. "Director, since when have I become anyone's sister?" "How come I didn't know?" she asked mockingly. "Cersei, with your seniority, who else here deserves to be called that?" Director Carson smiled. Cersei Lannister didn't seem pleased, casually responding, "I'm not some unknown actress's big sister. At most, I'm just an elder. Mia Dolan, I have plenty of things to teach you." "Oh, really? Then I thank you in advance." Mia Dolan couldn't miss the sarcasm in her voice. Outward harmony and hidden discord were the unspoken rules in this circle. Two actresses who couldn't stand each other could easily set aside past grievances for a role, though this, setting aside, was often just a front. Mia Dolan may have been new to the industry, but she understood a few things. "Don't mention it." Cersei Lannister gave her a disdainful look before strutting toward the makeup room. Director Carson exchanged a few more pleasantries before leaving. "Why haven't you started getting ready?" Gatsby Lucas, already done with his makeup, approached her with a smile. Mia Dolan shrugged. After what had happened before, she had learned her lesson. When Cersei Lannister was in makeup, it was best not to go in. If she did, it would definitely not end well, so she would rather wait until Cersei Lannister was done. "I'm waiting for Cersei Lannister to finish." "You poor thing." Gatsby Lucas looked at her small face, feeling a surge of protectiveness as he playfully pinched her cheek. Completely unguarded, Mia Dolan blushed as he pinched her. But then she thought about yesterday's events and couldn't help but ask, "By the way, were you okay yesterday?" "Yeah, I'm fine." Gatsby Lucas scratched his head, a hint of curiosity on his face. He wanted to ask about the mysterious man, but he realized he had no right to. "Good, I'm glad you're all right." Mia Dolan nodded, clearly with no intention of explaining further. Her indifferent attitude only made Gatsby Lucas more curious, and he leaned closer, snatching her script. "Hey, Gatsby Lucas, what are you doing, grabbing my script? Don't you have anything to tell me?" Gatsby Lucas looked at her with such deep eyes, as if trying to see right through her. Mia Dolan felt like she was going to go crazy. Why was this guy acting just like Tommy DeVito? Did he also want her to explain herself? Explain what? Can't you see I'm perfectly fine? If I'm alright, why should there be anything to explain? She gave him a sideways glance, snatching back her script and returning to her reading. "At the very least, you could give me a hint. Was that gentleman last night your father, an older brother, or perhaps a lover?" Gatsby Lucas asked smoothly. He was genuinely curious about that man's identity. He looked powerful. Although Gatsby Lucas was no slouch himself, he couldn't find any trace of the man's background. There was a part of him that felt a bit unsettled, especially when he looked at Mia Dolan. "Why don't you assume he's my lover?" Her words left Gatsby Lucas speechless, and they stood in silence, looking at each other, time seeming to freeze. Could it be? What do you think? In a place as ruthless as this, who stays pure? Everyone needs someone to back them up. I'm no different, Gatsby Lucas. You'd be wise to keep your distance from me. Faced with her serious expression, Gatsby Lucas felt as if someone had punched him in the chest, leaving him breathless. She wasn't wrong, but it hurt all the same. After all, this was the first time he had ever wanted to be serious about a woman. He had thought she was innocent, only to find out, he didn't stand a chance. Then Mia Dolan frowned slightly. Gatsby Lucas, I think, we're just not right for each other. You should go on living your carefree life. Gatsby Lucas rubbed his head in disappointment. You really know how to break a guy's heart. But you know what? Trying to get close to you is my choice, it's got nothing to do with anyone else, unless you don't want me around. You're even more stubborn than I thought. Mia Dolan laughed softly, but her eyes betrayed a hidden sadness. She was destined to be unlucky in love, both on screen and off. How could she stay innocent with Tommy DeVito? From the moment she met him, any trace of purity had faded like mist. She sighed, lowering her head to look at her script, unaware that Gatsby Lucas was still gazing at her. His eyes were full of affection and sympathy. She probably didn't realize that when she was engrossed in her script, her quiet demeanor stirred something in him, making him long to protect her, to hold her close and comfort her. Gatsby Lucas, you're quite the free spirit, Cersei Lannister remarked, stepping out in a cheongsam, her face appearing innocent though her eyes held a mocking glint. Work hard, rest hard, isn't that how it goes? Cersei Lannister gave Mia Dolan a disdainful look, clenching her fists. That woman. She must have latched onto someone powerful. She dared to take all her scenes. The script had been altered, leaving her with practically no screen time. On the other hand, Mia Dolan's role had nearly doubled. As a veteran actress, she understood that someone was pulling strings behind the scenes, otherwise, there was no way the script could have been changed so drastically. This new girl, Mia Dolan, might be a newcomer, but she was definitely no pushover. The more she thought about it, the more she despised Mia Dolan. She already didn't like her, and now she saw her as a thorn in her side. Meanwhile, Mia Dolan knew Cersei Lannister didn't like her, but she didn't expect her to act on it, so she didn't worry about it. In one scene, Mia Dolan fully immersed herself in the role of a ruthless woman, fiercely scolding Cersei Lannister with a wicked look in her eyes. But as she stepped toward Cersei Lannister, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her foot, as if something had stabbed her.